All right, I just wanted to hop on here quick at the beginning before we get into it. This week's guest, Andrew Nave, just wanted to give him a huge shout out. I messed up and maxed out an SD card, so we had to sit down and record the last half an hour or so a second time, and I messed up again, and for whatever reason it didn't record. So we had to do it a third time actually. So super thankful for him being patient and being willing to sit down and record the last little bit of this podcast 3 times. But just to let you guys know, if you hear us, questioning whether or not we talked about something before or not, that's why. And I know we also mentioned Becca a little bit in her podcast, and we actually sat down and recorded her podcast between the second and third times that we recorded the last little bit of this one. So that's why that happened. Again, super thankful for him being patient with me and understanding that I'm still figuring this stuff out. And I don't think you guys will even notice it, to be honest, but I just wanted to hop on and address it here at the beginning. But without further ado, we'll get into the podcast. All right, so I'm here with Andrew Nave Cowhorses. He's a cutting horse trainer in Everett, Pennsylvania. So we'll just hop right into it. If you want to kind of give your background, how you started, where you grew up, that kind of stuff.
Sure. Well, I appreciate you having me on and asking to come down here and do this. I love spreading the word about what we do and trying to get new people involved in this and kind of giving a little insight into what we do. I guess we start out with when I was a kid, I was really into horses. That was due to my grandfather. My dad bought me a horse. He wasn't really into horses, but they had all had horses as a kid growing up. My grandfather did some logging with horses, and he was big on doing like wagon trains with the family, and I never got to participate in one of them. They kind of stopped before I kind of got into horses, but my grandmother, my grandfather, my dad, and my uncles, all kind of participated in that. And then the first horse that I had gotten was an Appaloosa. She was an Appaloosa. Yeah, she was lazy. She was uglier than sin. I don't have anything against Appaloosas, but she was just lazy. But she was a great starter horse for me, to kind of build some confidence. I kind of took to the horse thing, and my grandfather asked me if I wanted to do 4-H. I had no idea what 4-H was, but we had a lady that lived just across the river from my grandfather who was a 4-H leader. They raised Arabians and paints, and I got in with them. Me and her son became pretty good friends, and before you know it, I was riding my horse across the river to hang out with him, or he'd be riding his horse across the river to hang out with me. We started breaking some young horses for him, and just playing around as kids. You're bulletproof, so getting bucked off was no big deal.
Yeah.
So that kind of started my interest in training horses. Then, as I got a little older, I was probably about 10 at that time. Got a little older, then I started, taking people's problem horses, that they couldn't ride on the trail because it would spook at this or spook at that. Starting a couple horses. That same lady who was my 4-H leader, she would breed a bunch of horses. She had a paint stallion and an Arabian stallion. And she had made a deal with me that she gave me 2 weanlings and I was to raise them up until they were 2 years old. And then at 2 years old, I got to pick which one I wanted, and she would get the other one back. I thought that was a great deal for me, so I did it. I ended up with a horse that I called Thorn. It was a quarter horse Arabian cross, and that was the first horse that I ever really trained from start to finish. He was a fantastic horse. I did all kinds of stuff with him. I'd rope off of him. I taught him to lay down. I took him to Colorado elk hunting, and he packed an elk out of the mountains for me. Did just about everything that I wanted him to do. Huge heart. From there, I kind of got out of horses when I hit maybe 16, 17. Just, school, girls, cars, You know, my focus kind of changed to sports and everything there. Then probably, I never lost that passion though. You know, like I still had that horse. I'd, trail ride him here and there, and I never lost that passion for horses. But then probably, I'm going to say around 22, 21, I started riding a little bit more. I ended up getting a job at 19 working in a state prison in Maryland. I went through Maryland State Police SWAT school, Maryland State Police sniper school, woodland tracking school. I really enjoyed that stuff. It kind of came easy to me. I then joined the National Guard, where I met TJ. In the National Guard, I went through Army sniper school, went through airborne school, did one or two other schools in there. Like I was really just hungry to learn and get as much training in as many schools in as possible. That's kind of, I hated school growing up as a kid, like I could never, focus on that kind of stuff. It never really interested me. But sports and anything to do, physically, I was drawn to it. So I got out of the military, and my wife at the time decided that she wanted to get into the military. She was going through her doctoral program, and she got some sort of program where they paid for every year she did in the military. They paid for a year of school. So she ended up getting in the military. We got stationed in Augusta, Georgia at Fort Gordon. She worked at Walter Reed down there. And at this time, I had about 6 years in at the prison with a 20-year retirement. I had a couple years, not a couple, but I could retire in 2 years if I would have stayed, which thinking about that, I'm like, man, that'd be nice to be able to be retired in 2 years. I don't know if I'll ever get to retire now. But I told her, I said, all right, listen, I'll quit my job. I'll move down there with you, because we had talked about kind of, I stay up here, she stay down there, we just move back and forth. And, I didn't really want to do that. And she didn't want me to do that. I said, I'll quit my job. I'll move down there with you, but I want to do what I want to do. Like, I'm not going to quit my job here and go work in a factory or go, I'll get a job right away down there, Yeah. But if I find something that I want to do, doesn't matter what it pays, I want to do that. She's like, yeah, that's fine, So I moved down there. I think I got a job at Tractor Supply as soon as I got down there, till I found something. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And that's, I went to college for like a semester. And I just couldn't see myself paying all this money. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like, I think I had went for elementary education or something like that. And I'm glad that I didn't go that route, because I love kids. I get along great with kids. But I just don't think being stuck in a classroom all day would have been my thing. So I get down there, and I knew I wanted to do something with horses, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I'd never really been exposed to the outside world of horses outside of Bedford County. We just did 4-H, and we trail rode a lot and did some sorting locally when I was a kid. But I just didn't realize the world outside of Bedford County. Yeah. And that showed a lot when I got on Google and typed in horse farms near me, and there was a cutting horse farm probably 20 minutes away from where we were staying. And I didn't know what a cutting horse was. I don't know that I'd ever seen a cutting horse. But I walked onto this guy's place and said, hey, I need a job. And he said, well, all right, well, can you ride? I said, yeah, I've been riding since I was a little kid. I've trained some horses for some people, what I thought was training at the time. And he said, all right. He said, we'll saddle that horse up right there, and you meet me over in the arena. I said, all right. So this was a real stocky bay gelding, beautiful horse. He'd won about 60,000 in cutting. So I saddle him up, and I walk him over to the arena. He said, now when you get on his back, he said, as soon as your butt hits that saddle, he said, you better start backing him up right away. And I said, okay, why? He said, well, because if you go forward right away, he's going to buck you off. I said, all right. So it turned out, I mean, this guy he was cold back, and if you got on him and started backing him up right away and turning him in circles, he was fine. But if you got on him and just tried to go forward, which is what I did to a lot of horses when I was a kid, I mean, we'd get on, we'd kick him, and we'd go. So I got on this thing, and I started backing him up, and, he took a big breath and kind of relaxed, and he's like, all right, you're good to ride him forward now. So I start riding him around the arena, and I'm trying to show off what I know, and I'm riding him, and I didn't wear spurs. I never wore spurs as a kid, never had them, just never had a need for them. Didn't even know how to use them. So I'm riding around, and about 10 minutes later, maybe 15, he's like, hey, come over here. So I go over to the bleachers where he's sitting outside the arena. They had like a little set of viewing bleachers, and he said, I thought you said you could ride. And I just kind of looked at him. I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
I'm riding him. I've been riding him. He goes, no, you're sitting on him. And right there, I mean, that was a huge eye opener for me. Like, back here, I thought I was pretty good. I'd won some saddles, I'd won some buckles. Like I was good in 4-H. I did barrels and poles, and I thought that I was a pretty good rider. And right there, day one, within the first 15 minutes, he told me that I was not.
Yeah. And
it was a huge hit. But I didn't ever let that discourage me, that just made me kind of want it more. I wanted to be that good rider. I wanted to know what they know. So I just kind of jumped in with both feet. He told me, he said, listen, like, I can't afford to pay you. He said, you don't know enough.
Yeah.
Like,
you're a liability more than anything at that point.
Right. Yeah. And I get it now, especially more than ever, because we have people all the time come and want a job, and, they think they can ride, and some of them can, but a lot of them can't. And if they can ride, trying to teach them the way that we ride it's a lot of bad habits to break. So honestly, I had a lot of bad habits to get over, and I probably still do, but I've really tried to be humble and go visit a lot of trainers, and when somebody's trying to teach me something or talk to me about something, keep my mouth shut. I find a lot today, like if you're trying to explain something to somebody, they'll be like, yeah, well, I don't, or I do it this way. Or, well, why are you here if you want to do it your way?
Yeah.
Why do you want to come learn from me or go learn from somebody else if you're just going to tell them how you do it? So I really try to just keep my mouth shut and listen. Whether I take their advice or not, I try to listen to them. But he told me, he's like, I can't afford to pay you, but if you come and you help me out here, I'll take the time and I'll spend with you in the evenings, and I'll teach you what I can. And this was a non-professional. I think he owned a pawn shop, but he had, several good cutting horses there that he just kind of kept tuned up himself. He had some trainers work for him in the meantime, but I worked for him for probably, I'm going to say, 4 months, never got a paycheck. Learned a decent amount in that 4 months. There was another guy there who had trained some horses in the past who was kind of coming and helping out, so I'd kind of hang with him and learn what he had to teach and help the other guy out. But we were at a horse auction probably at the end of that 4 months, and it was just a local backyard kind of horse auction, nothing major. And the guy I was with, who I met at this job, he ends up being a really good buddy of mine. I still talk to him to this day. He's like, do you know who that is? And I said, I have no idea who that is. And he pointed to this guy over there. And he's like, well, that's Eddie Braxton. I said, that doesn't mean anything to me. I have no idea who that is. And he said, well, he's a Hall of Fame cutting horse trainer. He's won over $2 million. And I said, well, this is a guy that I need to meet. So I go introduce myself, and I say, hey, you looking for any help? He says, well, yeah, I am. And I didn't know this at the time, but finding help is really hard. Yeah. And I was like thinking, holy crap, like I got a job working for a cutting horse trainer. But we'll take just about anybody. So he said, can you be at my place on Monday? I said, sure. So Monday rolls around, and I pull in, and he's riding around in the outdoor arena, and I walk up and I'm like, hey, you what do you need? Whatever. He kind of shows me what they do and what he expects of me and tells me. And I say, all right, when do you want me to start? He said, tomorrow. I said, all right, I'll be here. And at that point, I was like, thank God he didn't ask me to ride, because I was afraid it was going to be the same situation as the guy before. But I ended up working for him, I would say, for about 4 years. He was kind of in the transition of going from cutting horses to sorting horses. He still had some cutters. We were doing a lot of sortings. We were holding sortings at his place. In that first 3 months of working for him, I lost 33 pounds. I mean, I was working like crazy. We had probably somewhere between 40 and 60 horses there. Eddie was a phenomenal horse trainer. Then I worked for him for a while, and my wife ended up getting stationed in Alabama. So we moved down to Phoenix City. Well, she got stationed at Fort Benning, but we lived in Phoenix City. And that was a long drive. I think it was like 3 or 4 hours. So I found another cutting horse trainer in Alabama, and I worked for him for like maybe 2 months. We went out to the Futurity. First we went to Oklahoma, and we rode with a guy out there for a little bit before the Futurity. Then we went down to the Futurity, and that was my first taste of a cutting horse show. And it happened to be the Futurity. I was riding around a really, really green 3-year-old in that pen with 50 other 3-year-olds, and I had no idea what I was doing. It turned out to, I mean, it went okay, but it was definitely an eye-opening experience. But I knew at that point that this is where I wanted to be. Yeah. You know, like walking in that arena in the Will Rogers, you know, watching that show, like I knew this is where I wanted to go. I actually, up on that shelf, there's a little bottle of sand. I didn't have anything with me at the time, but I had a snuff can, an empty snuff can. I actually took some sand from the Will Rogers, and I put it in that bottle, and I hung that in my truck until I made it to my first Futurity and showed at my first Futurity. Then I took it out of my truck and put it up there. But that was like a constant reminder, you know, of what I wanted to work towards, where I wanted to be.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then Rebecca, actually, she has a jar of it, because I told her what I did, and she has a jar of it sitting on her desk now. So after that, the guy that I was working for at the time, he decided that he was going to take the winter off. So I was out of a job. So I called Eddie, went back to work for him, but I moved into like this little trailer. It was a dump. I don't think it was fit to hold chickens. I stood in the shower and water ran out the crack in the tub instead of the drain. But I didn't care, you know, like none of that mattered to me, because I wanted to learn. Yeah. I wanted that so bad. I think Eddie was paying me like $50 a day at the time, and I was working like 7 days a week. It didn't matter. Yeah. You know, he could have paid me nothing, and I probably still would have done it. I remember there was, you know, we'd get up the days of the sortings, you know, I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, work all day, and you know, I was the last one to bed at night because I had to make sure everything was taken care of. I'd run back to the house, I'd throw something in the microwave, shower, come out, eat it, go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning because I had to get back up at 4 or 5 the next day to start it all again. None of that, you know, none of that mattered to me because I wanted it so bad. Then me and my wife ended up splitting up. I ended up moving back up to Pennsylvania. When I got back up here to Pennsylvania, I knew I wanted to train cutters, but there wasn't any, you know, like cutting wasn't as big as what it is now. There was some shows in Charlottesville. But sorting was starting to take off. You know, when I was with Eddie, I kind of figured out how to train the sorting horses. You know, I was always riding the lower end stuff till they got to a certain point, and then, you know, or they weren't ready for Eddie, and then Eddie would take them over. So I did that for a while, and I finally got a client, you know, but I was also taking anything and everything. Yeah. I was working a full-time job for a veterinarian. I'd come home in the evenings. I'd get on there, like, well, I had a Tricaner, I had some Arabs, I had some Halflingers. Whatever I could get in my barn, I thought, you know, it's just going to be experience for me, and if I can make this thing cut, I can make anything cut.
Yeah.
So I was training some sorting horses for some people. Doing that, my pen was just a 60 by 60 pen. I didn't have a barn. All I had was round pen panels that I made into, 12 by 12 stalls outside. I went to the auction and I bought 4 dairy cows. That's what I used. I didn't have the money to buy an actual pro cutter or cow track, so I made one out of a drill. I had somebody run that while I'd work the horses on the flag till I got enough saved up that I could buy a flag. I had an old steel Ponderosa horse trailer. I did that for a little bit. And then I found a barn here locally that had a small indoor and they had an outdoor pen. So I talked with them and they were willing to lease me 8 stalls. So I used that for a little bit. And then it got to the point when I was working for the vet that things were slowing down there. I wasn't getting as many hours and the horse training was starting to pick up. And I came to that point where I had to make a decision. Like, am I going to go all out on this, or am I just going to, keep dipping my toes in the water? And I finally made that commitment, like, hey, we're going to do this. So we went full bore at it. And I think we've progressed every year, which I think is fantastic. We keep doing bigger and better things. We've made some great relationships along the way. We're at this place now. We've been here for 5 years. We're getting ready to put up an indoor. And it's a lot of work, but it's fun. I've gotten to do a lot of stuff that I never thought I'd get to do, and it's working out pretty good.
Yeah. No, that's a really cool intro into it, or just seeing how that progression worked. Like, I understand the being introduced to horses kind of early, and then it just kind of sticks with you even if you get out of it, and then wanting to find your way back in there. And the way you kind of jumped into it's pretty sweet, in my opinion. Do you think, like, from your perspective looking back, is kind of working your way into it slowly like you did to an extent, like working a job in addition to like starting to train and build yourself up before you totally hang your shingle out there and go about it that way is the way you would do it again if all things considered? Or
well, I don't really know how to answer that, because I feel like there's a couple ways to get into it. Like I see a lot of kids that have grew up in the industry and they're doing fantastic things. They're doing phenomenal things. Like Colt Moore, Colby Moore, like they were in a cutting horse family. Their grandfather, Gary, trained cutting horses. Their dad, Casey, trains cutting horses, and now Colt and Colby. Colt just broke $1 million earnings. He's got the opportunity to work with some great people. Austin Shepard, Cade Shepard, Sam Shepard. It's family, generations of cutting horse trainers. And I see these people who, right out of school, they pack up and they go down to Texas and they live with trainers down there, and, they build that way. Not unfortunately, that wasn't an option for me, because I got out of school, started a job. If I would have done it, from day one, as soon as I got out of school, I guess it would have been an option. But I ended up starting a family, so I wanted to be where my child was. So I didn't have the option to really go. Now, I did have the option when I went out to the futurity. I got offered a job out in Oklahoma, working for a guy out there that I could have done that. But it just wasn't in the cards for our family at the time. Now, my wife at the time still had some schooling and she still had some things to do. So it just wasn't an option. I think if that's not an option for you, because that's probably your quickest route, is to do that, go work for somebody, full time. If that's not the option, then, and you still have to work because you have bills and stuff like that, working a full-time job and getting in when you can, stuff like that. Like, if I got 2 hours free in the afternoon or 2 hours free in the morning, go spend it somewhere. I constantly try to ask myself, what have I done today to make my business better? What have I done today to make myself a better horse trainer? Even if it's something for 10 minutes, if it's watching a 10-minute video or, spending 10 minutes on the phone talking to another trainer, something. I've got to do something to promote my business or to make me a better trainer, to make my horses better, something that day, every day, no matter what day it is. So you can either, run down to Texas or anywhere, and find a job with a cutting horse trainer. The problem is, just like with myself, our time's valuable, our money's valuable, that it's hard to just hire somebody off the street that doesn't know anything, like you're going to get an entry-level job and it's going to be entry-level pay. Like, we charge for our lessons, but now you want me to pay you to teach you. It's a tough thing for us to kind of swallow. So you're going to probably start out cleaning stalls because you can be valuable. Like, it doesn't take a lot to clean a stall. Like, as long as you're dedicated to making sure your job, you're doing your job correctly, I can teach you how to clean a stall in about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's not a great job, but how do you expect to learn to ride cutting horses if you don't know how to take care of them?
Yeah.
And that's something that, we want to see. We want to see, if you want to learn, if you want to be a cutting horse trainer and I hire you to clean stalls, those stalls should look the best they've ever looked. If you can show me you can do that, all right, now I'll let you start saddling and unsaddling. If my horses are saddled right every day, if, you're hosing them off and you're taking pride in your work, all right, well, now we'll start letting you warm them up. You start loping them, you start exercising them, cooling them down. You show me that you can do that and you take pride in that. All right, now I'm going to spend a little bit of time with you in the afternoon and I'm going to teach you this or I'm going to teach you that. And we're going to build to that. But if you come in and you don't take care of that stall, well, if you don't value my time, why should I value yours?
Yeah.
And it's hard for people to realize that and understand that. And Rebecca is one of the good ones. That Rebecca started working for me. I paid her $150 a week. Now, she wasn't full time. We didn't have a ton of horses at the time, but I paid her $150 a week, and she spent all kinds of time here. Like, we would be done for the day, and I'm like, all right, you can go home. And she's like, well, I didn't get this done, and we didn't get to exercise these 2 horses a day. Do you mind if I go down and just ride them? Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
So she'd go down and she'd ride, and I'd see her down there working, and I'd walk down to the arena, and I'd watch her for a little bit, and I'd be like, hey, do this and do that. And I'd give her a couple of pointers. And I'd, next time I'd do the same thing. But she wanted it. She showed me that it didn't matter if she was getting paid or not. She was going to make sure that she got, the job done, or that she was trying as much as she could. She was always asking me, hey, is there a video I can watch, or is there something I can do? I said, yeah, go on YouTube and watch how to wrap legs. So she learned how to do polo wraps. So I watched her do it a couple times. I'm like, yeah, that's good. Go ahead. So, and she just wanted it, kind of the same that I did.
Yeah.
And that's shown, she's built a great business for herself. And, she does a very good job. She's a certified equine massage therapist. She did the MagnaWave thing for a while. She's doing a phenomenal job with these young horses and these horses that are, have some issues that have been, maybe not started correctly by someone or rushed. She really takes her time, is real patient with them. And I was really hard on her, like, I have a certain way that I like things done. Bridles better be hung up a certain way, legs better be wrapped a certain way. I like to, keep the place as nice as I can. Mm-hmm. It's a lot taking care of a facility, but my thought was, if this place doesn't look like a $100,000 horse, $200,000 horse should be here, nobody's going to send it.
Yeah.
If it doesn't look like we're taking care of that horse, or that horse isn't, in good flesh, or, there's nails sticking out everywhere or whatever, nobody's going to send their horse. So we've got to maintain a high level of care on these horses.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard Clinton Anderson talk about, like, his place and how he had, like, it was getting mowed, like, every other day, like, looked pristine, had a huge entrance, but when you're dealing with horses that cost that much money, like, that's what that kind of person that's willing to spend that much money is kind of looking for.
Yeah, and honestly, like, some of the best horse trainers I've seen, like, they might pull in a podunk, they always said to me, it's not the money you pull in with, it's the money you leave with. And that's true to an extent, but a lot of people in, today's world, like, they want to see, that you have a good truck that's not going to break down, and for years I had 2 trucks because one was always in the shop. You know, I had a 2000 Ford and a 2007 Ford, and one was always in the shop. Every long trip that I went on was costing me $1,200 in repairs, it seemed like.
Yeah.
And I always told myself, man, I can't afford to go buy a new truck. Well, with the warranties and stuff today, I couldn't afford not to. You know, now my truck breaks down, I take it to the shop, it's fixed, and it doesn't cost me anything. We still have 2 trucks, but it's because we're pulling 2 trailers. But, you know, that was something, you know, clients were concerned about because my truck kept breaking down, you know, and now their horse is sitting in Kentucky somewhere alongside the road because we were on our way to Texas and we broke down.
Yeah.
So getting that new truck, it's not because I want a nice fancy new truck. It's because now that truck's reliable and I can get to where I'm going and not have to worry about it. I mean, things still happen, but I don't think that truck has ever left me sitting alongside the road. When that other one, I had like US Rider and AAA, and I'd use every toe on them a year. You know, you get 3 free toes with each of them, and I had used them all.
Yeah. So if we want to pivot a little bit and just talk about kind of cutting in general, like I said before we started, I don't really know it that well. I follow it a little bit, but like I don't even understand the scoring in it, you know. So if you want to talk to the horses or, you know, showing or just the industry as a whole, for anyone else that is in the same boat as me, it doesn't totally know what exactly goes on.
Sure. So basically what cutting is, if I were to dumb it down to, you know, the average Joe, is basically we're playing a game of keep away. Cows are herd animals. You know, they want to be with the herd. And what we do is we separate one cow from the herd and we put our hand down and we don't steer that horse with our hands. And that horse is supposed to be trained to keep that cow from getting back to the herd. That's the simplest form of it. And we have 2.5 minutes. We have to cut at least 2 cows. Most of the time we cut 3, but there's times that we only cut 2, depending on what has happened in that run. So I believe how this all started is years ago, out in Texas or Oklahoma or wherever, you know, they have 400 head of mama cows and there's 400 calves. And everybody'd get together and they'd put these cows in a big bunch because they didn't have portable panels and, you know, all this fancy equipment that you can just drive out and set up big pens. So they'd all circle these cows and put them in a group, and they'd build their fire for branding, and that's where their ground crew would be with the brands and, you know, stuff to castrate them and ear tags or, you know, whatever they were doing to those cattle. And they would take their best horses. They'd go into that herd of cattle. They'd drive out the calves, and that cutting horse would keep that cow away until somebody could come up and get a rope on it, because it's pretty tough to rope, you know, a 300, 400-pound calf when it's standing in a group of 800 with a bunch of mama cows. You know, it's half the size, if not smaller. You can't get a rope on it. So they'd drive it out, they'd rope it, they'd drag it to the fire. You know, they didn't want that cow to run the whole way around the herd. So that's why in our cutting pen we have a back fence. If that cow or that horse gets within 3 feet of that back fence, we get a penalty, because now that if you were out in the middle of nowhere, that cow would be running around that herd. So our shows are kind of set up to mimic that situation. Basically, where that judge is setting would be our fire, our branding fire. So we want to hold that cow in the middle of that pen, right in front of the judge, and that's where we earn all our money. If that cow's going from wall to wall and the wall's stopping the cow and not the horse, we tend to start losing money. You know, our score goes down. There's 4 other people in that pen that are helping us. Those are our competitors. But in this sport, a lot of times, most of the time, those guys want to see you win just as much as you want to win. So it's kind of a checks and balance system that, you know, my buddy's out there helping me. When it's his turn to go show his horse, I'm going to go help him the best that I can. I don't want him to lose because I messed up.
Yeah.
Not saying that I'm perfect out there, and probably there's more times than I can count that I've messed up. but I always feel really bad about that, you know, and I apologize to them, and they've done the same thing, you know, like I've been frustrated with what somebody else has done out there, you know, and I keep my mouth shut, and they'll come up and say, hey man, I apologize, you know, I was trying to get my horse to do this and it did that. But it's a really nice checks and balance system, you know, and I get to pick those people that I want out there.
Yeah.
You know, we call that our help, and, you know, we get to pick them, and a lot of times, you know, clients will tip those guys, and it's really nice. But two of those guys are called the herd holder, and they're the guys closest to the herd. Their job is to find cattle for you and keep the herd in the center of the pen, so it's just not drifting all over the arena. So I tend to try to pick guys to help me in the herd who I feel are really good at reading cattle, really good at identifying cattle, that, you know, they'll help talk to me through the run, because it's tough sometimes to see everything that's going on. You know, you got that cow running back and forth, your horse is going back and forth. Sometimes you don't feel yourself drifting back into the herd, so they're yelling, hey, stay up into that cow. So you try to ride up into that cow a little bit. Your other two guys out there are your herd holders, or your turnbacks. Their job is to keep feeding that cow to you, meaning if that cow goes to kick away, they can push it back into you and say, hey, you know, keep that cow's focus on getting back to the herd and to you. Their job is to also, like, put up the trash. You know, if the cow I want's going out, but 3 or 4 other ones are with it, and I don't clear those cows, they can push them back into the herd for me and help me out there. So we have 2 minutes and 30 seconds to do this. We go in. As soon as we start walking into that herd of cattle, we start getting judged. The judge is looking for how quietly our horse goes through that herd. You know, does he look anxious? Is he trying to bite cows? Is he trying to paw at cattle? Which you'll see sometimes. You know, these horses get really anxious, and that's a common thing that people will call me, and they'll be like, hey man, I got this really cowy horse, like he's in with a pen of cows and he's just biting them and kicking them, and, you know, like he really wants to eat them. And I'm like, well, that's not really a great characteristic for a cutting horse. We want them to pay attention to cattle. We want them to want to track cattle, but we don't want them to bite them or kick them or stuff them. Like, we get penalized for that. And it's really an anxiety thing with those horses. So as we go in, we're getting judged on that. We're getting judged on, you know, is our hand sword fighting out there with our reins? You know, are we jerking back and forth? They want to see us go in there with a calm horse, make our cut really clean, really smooth, so that cow doesn't even really know it's being cut. It's all of a sudden like, oh, I'm out here by myself. So that's the first part of it. And then once we put our hand down, that's called our herd work. So we can get a check, which is average, and we start out with a score of 70. We can get a check, which is average. We can get a check plus, which is kind of like half a point, or a plus, which is like a point. And then it can go the other way, where we get a check minus or a minus. Once our hand goes down, now it's time for our horse to take over. We are still helping our horse. I always try to explain it to people as it's like that duck on the water. I think that's from the Replacements, maybe, the football movie. He's like, you know, that duck on the water looks calm, but if you were underneath that water, those feet are constantly moving. Mm-hmm. And that's what ours do. You know, like, we're helping our horses with our feet. We're helping our horses with our seat and our body position. You know, I might be tapping them on one side saying, hey, stay up into that cow, or I might be pushing on the cow side saying, hey, get off that cow a little bit, or both feet, we need to go faster. Or I could be sitting there praying, hoping this thing's going to stop.
Yeah.
That's where you get into, you know, the beginner guys getting into that. You know, hopefully we get them that older horse that kind of knows his job and is a little more seasoned, where their main job is watch the cow and just cover that cow. But when you start getting into those younger horses, you know, until they get seasoned, you're constantly helping them. So once our hand goes down, we get judged on several things. We get judged on eye appeal, which is, how does that horse look while he's doing his job? You know, does he look confident? Does he look intense? Is his ears up? Is he bright-eyed? Is he electric? Is he stopping flat? Is he leaning on the cow? Is he going up the pen? Is he charging the cow? We get judged on that. We get judged on whether our horse misses the cow or not, meaning the cow stops and our horse takes an extra stride, or the horse turns left, the cow goes right. and then he has to scramble to catch up. And it's not so much how far out of position you are, it's how long did it take your horse to recover. If my horse jumps one way, but then in one stride gains control of that cow again, that's maybe not a miss. But if he has to run the whole way across the arena to catch that cow, that's definitely a miss. So we'll get judged on that. We'll get judged on the degree of difficulty. Is this cow just walking around out there, or is it actively running back and forth trying to get to the herd and causing my horse to give 100% effort? We'll get judged on the amount of courage that we show. Did we have a spot that we can get off that cow? Meaning, so there's only 2 times in cutting that you can quit working a cow. One of them is if that cow stops and he has to stand. I can't remember exactly what speed it is, but it's basically he has to stand still for a second. All 4 feet have to be planted in the ground for a second. Then we can quit, meaning that cow gave up and just stood still.
Yeah.
Going back in the day, if we're out on the ranch and that cow stops for a second, now that guy can get a rope on that cow. Or if that cow turns away from us and starts going away. If it turns away and starts going away from us, it means it gave up trying to get back to that herd. We can quit. So we'll work that cow until that happens. If we quit any time before that, it's called a hot quit, and we lose 3 points. So now our score went from a 70, down to a 67. That's what we call a major penalty. It's really hard to recover from that. If you have a hot quit, you're probably not going to get a check that day.
Yeah.
So if I'm working a tough cow and that cow turns away from me and I stay on that cow because I know my horse can handle that tough cow, that's going to show the judge that there's some courage there. Like he could have got off. That was a pretty tough cow. He could have got off, but he didn't because he knows his horse can handle it. The judge is going to reward me some points and courage. If I drive that cow out there and that cow makes 2 turns and it looks like it's a bad cow and I get off right at the first chance I get, I might not have so much courage. I don't trust my horse enough. So that's another box will be herd work, eye appeal, degree of difficulty, courage, time work, the amount of time work. Did I work each cow for 10 seconds or did I work each cow for 20 seconds? So that's a column that we can get some extra points. Like if I know, hey, my first cow wasn't that good, I'm going to hurry up and try to get another cow out there and work it for a good amount of time so that I can show that judge, hey, listen, that cow wasn't really good, but this is what my horse can do.
Yeah.
And then there's all kinds of penalty points that are just penalties. There's no up or down. Like how loose are my reins? Like that's one that can only be a minus. If my reins are too short, I'm going to get a minus there. I can get excessive herd help, meaning the guys in the pen are basically helping me control that cow instead of me controlling it. I can have misses. I can have reining points, meaning my horse didn't turn, so I picked my hand up and moved it to help it. Mm-hmm. That's a reining point. That's a deduction of a point. There's my horse biting or pawing cattle. There's if I get pushed back into the herd and cows come out into my working area, I get penalized for that. I get penalized for not making a deep cut, meaning one of my 2 or 3 cuts, I have to enter into the body of the herd. Like I can't just take one on the outside. And what that kind of does is keep, like some of these horses get scared of cattle and they get scared of cattle all around them. Well, that wouldn't fly back in the day. So they make you enter into the body of the herd at least one time to show that your horse can handle the pressure of all those cows being around it. If I spur in the shoulder, if I make noise at cattle, so like let's say a cow's really pushing on my horse, I could yell at it and scare that cow away. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a penalty. Now I'm allowed to kiss to my horse. I'm allowed to talk to my herd help, so I can do all those things. And that's something the herd help, you're constantly talking with those guys. Before I go into cut, I usually try to tell those guys, hey, listen, these are the 3 cows that I want to cut. And what they'll do, how we pick our cows, I should have probably talked about this earlier, is in a fresh cattle class, what they'll do is the first person in that class, they have to hire somebody to settle the cattle. So I'll go find somebody that I trust, and I'll have them go in and settle those cattle. And what they're doing is they're getting those cattle used to the arena, getting them cattle used to a horse being around them. And we watch those cattle as trainers. And I have index cards that I carry with me to shows, and I try to write down every single cow that's in that pen. And, for a limited age class, that's 3 cows per horse. So if there's 10 horses in that class, that's 30 cows in that pen. And usually at least 50% of them are solid black cattle. So you're looking for every little thing that you can. And you really don't write down ear tag numbers, because when those cows are walking away from you as you're driving up, you can't see those numbers.
Yeah.
And it's hard to see a little number sometimes when those cattle are moving around. So we look for, it's got a stray hair sticking up in the middle of its back, or it's got a wart on the left side of its nose, or it's got a razor on its tail. Like there's so many different things you can look for. But so when they're settling, I'm writing down all these cattle. First I start out with my colored cattle, and I'll write down all the red cattle, and then I'll write down all the Charolais cattle, and then I'll write down all the what we call marker cattle, meaning they're black cows but they have white on their face. So like my black markers, meaning my baldies, my motts, my blinders, anything like that. There might be a cow with 1 white foot. There might be a cow with a white navel. Every little thing I can, I'm going to write down every cow. And once I get them all wrote down, then I'll start watching these cows. And I'm going to watch what they're doing when that turnback horse or that herd settler gets close to them with that horse. If that horse comes towards that cow and that cow picks its head up and takes off running, that's probably not a cow I want to cut. That cow is probably, if I get it out there by itself, going to run wall to wall, want to be crazy. I don't want a cow that when that guy walks to him, he just stands there and doesn't do anything. Because I get him out there by himself, he's probably going to stand there and not do anything, or he's going to turn and walk right past the horse because he doesn't respect that horse. So we want to look for something kind of in between that. I want one that has a lot of feel, like when that horse goes to it, it kind of trots away, but as soon as that horse gets outside that cow's bubble, it stops and turns and looks at it. It's constantly checking in with that horse. So during that show, our lopers are out there getting our horses ready, and they play a huge role because we don't get much time on that horse before we go show it. They've got to have it warmed up. They've got to have it ready to go. We might get a set on its back for a minute, 2 minutes at the most, getting that horse ready, getting its mindset right so that when we walk in that pen, it's ready to go show. We've got to be able to really trust those guys. And those are the guys who are working for me at home because they get those horses ready for me every day. And when I step off of them after I've worked them, I tell them, hey, listen, this guy wasn't ready. I don't know what you're doing, but do something different. The next day I come out and, man, if that horse feels really good, I'm like, hey, this horse felt great today. Whatever you did today, let's keep doing that. And what they're doing is they're just getting those horses in the right mindset. They're taking a little oxygen away from them. I like to think of it as like those kids at recess. Like we don't give them recess just so they can go play. We give them recess to burn off that energy so that when they come back and sit in the classroom, they're ready to think instead of talking to their friends and, making airplanes. So they're out there blowing that extra energy off of them, making those horses think, getting them ready to work. And it does 2 things. It does that, but then it also lets those horses know that when I step on them, it's time to go to work. But if I'm out there just exercising them, going on trail rides and this and that, it's tough because I only get that minute to 2 minutes to get them ready. I need them to know, hey, when he gets on, it's time to work. And that's all I'm there for, is to work. Not saying I don't go give them treats in the stalls and rub on them, create a bond with them. But I try to let my lopers get those horses ready. And, all the time. I'll warm one up here and there and, but that's what they're going to be doing at the show. I'm going to be showing them. Mm-hmm. And it really, I think, helps create, that horse knows when I get on it, it's time to go to work. Yeah.
Kind of creates that switch in them that when you get on, it's turning that switch on that they're.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's something that I haven't seen in the reining, at least anyway. It's pretty much, you might see a trainer for a non-pro get on and warm the horse up, and then a non-pro hop on and go. Or But if it's a trainer that's going to show it, a lot of times they might have someone trotted around a little bit for them, but they're pretty much on them the whole time leading up to when they go in the pen. So that's kind of interesting.
So what do they do if they have a horse like back to back?
Then you'd have someone else on it.
You'd have someone else on it. Yeah. So pretty much like most of the time I'm in that pen and I'm either helping somebody else, I'm turning back for them, or I'm a herd holder for them. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not, I'm trying to keep track of the cattle, because if I draw first, I have 30 options of fresh cattle to go cut. If I draw last, I might have 4.
Yeah.
And I need to know which 4 of those are so that I can go cut those cows that weren't worked by a horse. Now, I don't have to cut the fresh ones. I can cut reruns that have already been worked. And on my cattle card, if I see a guy work a cow and I like that cow and he didn't abuse that cow, like that cow didn't run him over, or he didn't like pick his horse up and work on it, and let's say it was his last cow and he only worked it for 5 seconds before the buzzer went off, I might make a note on my card like, hey, if I need to, this cow would probably go again. But we try to, keep track of all those cows. And I've had horses it didn't matter. Like I can think of one horse in particular. Like when I walked to the herd, I knew I could cut any cow in that pen. It didn't matter. That horse was going to hold it. He was going to do a good job holding it. He was going to look good doing it. And that's an awesome feeling to know you have that horsepower underneath of you. All the cows that everybody was steering away from because it was too much cow for their horse. Mm-hmm. I'm like, we got this. And, that's the cow I'd go cut.
Yeah.
And it worked out well. Those horses are few and far between. That's another thing we're looking for. Like I might have a horse that's a little greener, or he's really stylish, but he's really stylish on a soft cow. So I'm going to look for that soft cow to go cut on him. Where I might have one that it doesn't stand still. Like this horse won't stand still. So if I get a cow that wants to be real soft, he's just too anxious, too antsy. So I'm going to go look for that cow that's going to challenge him a little bit and like make him go run and stop. It's a job being at those shows.
Yeah.
It's mentally draining, as long as physically draining, because there's been many times that we've started at 8 a.m. and I get off that horse at 10 p.m. Like I eat my lunch on that horse. I jump off just to go to the bathroom, or maybe take it back to the stall, let it get something to drink. Or at those shows, sometimes I'll take 2 different turnback horses. But those horses are the ones that, we're on them for 10, 12 hours a day sometimes, and they stick it out.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we don't ride those horses at home, so they're not in great shape. They're turned out. They're our using horse. Mm-hmm. But those guys really put in a lot of time, just as much as we do at those shows, those horses.
Yeah. Yeah, I think something that makes like the cutting and the cow horse really interesting to me is that third factor of the cattle. Because in the reining, it's just you and your horse, and that horse is looking to you for the right answer to everything, pretty much. You're trying to make it look as seamless as you can, but you want them waiting on you to tell them like what to do the whole time, pretty much. But especially with the cutting, when you have to put your hand down and it's kind of on the horse, like you said, you help them and stuff, but you're not able to really make big corrections or anything. And then the fact that the cattle play into it, and that's like there's a third player out there that has a say in the outcome at the end.
Well, I feel that there's even more than a third player. You said about the reining, like that horse waiting on you. Like I've done a lot of things, a lot of tough things. Like I feel like other people would think we're tough. Like Maryland State Police SWAT school and sniper school and Army sniper school and that kind of stuff. Like those were difficult things, and it's not something like the average person I feel could just go do. But I've never found anything as tough as what cutting is. And that's not just physically, but mentally. Like I go to the chiropractor and, like I get jarred around a lot. But it's so demanding mentally, and not just thinking about, well, what do I need to do with this horse, or what do I need to do with that horse, or what cow am I going to cut? But just keeping yourself in the right frame of mind when you go to work these horses, And there's been days that I've worked 3 horses and I've told my help, I'm like, hey, listen, just lope them the rest of the day because, if the first horse doesn't work good, well, it might be that horse. And the second horse doesn't work good, well, that might be that horse too. I get around to the third or fourth horse and they're not working good. I've got to start looking at myself. Like, where's my state of mind?
Yeah.
Am I worried about something else that's going on? Am I worried about this client, or am I worried about, my house payment or this or that? Like, am I frustrated somewhere else in my life that things aren't going well here? And I've, told them, hey, just lope these next couple ones. And I went in the house and I've dealt with my stuff or whatever, and then get myself in a better frame of mind to come back down maybe in the afternoon and like, all right, let's try this again. And you've really got to be in a good state of mind when you're working these guys, because they'll tell on you in a heartbeat. So not holding grudges against these horses, he might have been a turd yesterday, but I'm going to come out today and treat him like he's been the best horse in the world for me. And treating each horse as an individual. Not a single horse in my barn works the same as the next one. They're all individuals, just like people are individuals. I've got to figure out that individual. And I know we talked about this a little bit at the barn, but developing kind of a relationship with each horse, that I know, hey, this horse is just having a bad day. Like he's better than this. Mm-hmm. They have bad days just like I have bad days. So most of the time I can tell if he's just having a bad day or if he's just not trying. Is he just need a little motivation, or should I just take it easy on him today? Let's just go for get a little exercise or just work on getting soft. There's some drills that we do, and we do it on our 2-year-olds and we do it on our old seasoned horses, just making sure they're soft and they're listening, and, just win somewhere. Easy day for him if he's not having a good day. Find a win somewhere and put him up and try again the next day. Really getting to know these horses and know what they need and what they feel like. That has been a struggle that I feel in the past couple of years has really, came along for me. And I've done, several different things in the horse world. Nothing in my eyes compares to the cutting. And I'm not trying to down any other discipline or anything like that, but I can't think of another equine sport where you put your hand down and you let that horse take over, ideally. Mm-hmm. Ideally, I don't have to do a single thing out there. I cut my cow, I put my hand down, and that guy does everything for me. That's the goal. A lot of times that doesn't happen. I've got to help here, I've got to help there. But I can't think of a single equine sport where you do that. In reining, you got your hand picked up and you can help them with your hands. And barrel racing, you help them with your hands. And roping, you help them, like everything mm-hmm. Every other sport, you're helping them. Yeah. Where in this sport, like I can't use my hands. I can use my hands for a little bit just till I get my cow cut. And then that horse has to take over. And it's really amazing to sit back and think about the level of intelligence in these animals, mm-hmm. And we talked a little bit about, riding papers earlier, but like people want to send, all kinds of horses all the time. And I'll try. Like I had an Arabian here that we had cutting. We had a gypsy vanner that we worked on cattle. We'll do whatever you want us to do. Yeah. But I always, we use border collies to bring in our cattle, and I buy them trained because I don't know the first thing about training them. But I can train that border collie, or I could probably find somebody to train that border collie to go find a coon in the woods. But he's probably not going to do it as well as what that blue tick or that walker's going to do it, or mm-hmm. whatever coon dog. So we really try to look at that, like what is this horse bred to do? What is it bred? What is it built to do? And we can take that a step farther, as we talked a little bit earlier. Different bloodlines seem to work better different ways. You can be really hard on this bloodline, or you got to take it real slow and easy with this one, or it's just, there's so much that goes into this sport. And I don't know anything about reining with a barrel racing. Now, we've started some barrel horses and we've rode a couple of reiners here and there. But I don't know if it's like that in every other sport, Western sport. I just feel like the level that these horses have to be on, like, you can take the best bred thing in the world, but they still sometimes don't make it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've talked about that some in some of the other podcasts too. I think with TJ actually, because we were talking a little bit like that, and I talked about that vintage smoke earlier that seemed like he came broke, but we also talked about how you get surprised every now and then. Someone buys something that isn't supposed to be anything, and it's you go and beat some of those horses. Like, that part of it's crazy to me too, but I think it is starting to get to the point that you look at papers and you kind of know what you're getting into.
Yeah, for sure. But there's always an exception, and like you said, we have one in the barn right now that it's like a great grandson of a good cutting horse, but there's really nothing else on its papers that would make me think, hey, this thing wants to go cut. Mm-hmm. And he's doing fantastic. I'm looking forward to getting to show him this year. It's one that, had a little time on it, not by a cutting horse trainer, but just by a guy who was riding his horse and decided that he wanted to send it for work on cows. And we started working, and we're like, hey, this thing, really wants to do this, and it's athletic and it's got a cool style, and that's why I try not to discount any of the, a lot of times, I hear, through the grapevine, well, so-and-so wanted to send their horse, but they didn't think it was good enough. Well, you don't know if it's good enough until it's here. That's those guys shortchanging themselves and their horse. Like, we will try. We will try as best as we can, they get the same amount of effort and, a lot of times more, because we got to go a little, we got to work a little harder on those, is what, a metallic cat coming into our program would be. Half the horses, when they first come in, I don't know what they're bred. I learn later on when I'd be like, hey, I call them like, hey, your horse is doing really well. What's this thing bred?
Yeah.
So we have one that, it was that gray horse that Hunter was riding around when you were there. I've never heard of its sire before. And that's one of the nicer ones, young horses that we have. I had to call the owner and say, hey, can you send me a picture of its papers? I really like this guy.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because I feel like I give every horse a fair shot. I think it's a bad thing because when it comes, to bloodlines and stuff, I feel like I'm not as knowledgeable as what some of these people are. Off the top of my head, like Colby Moore, you could ask him about any horse and he's going to know the dam and the grand dam and this and that, just about every one of them. Mm-hmm. And he was brought up in that industry. So, he's seen a lot of those horses. But I would love to be on that level someday where I can know all that stuff. But we'll give them a shot. No doubt about it. That, not saying they can't do it, but it's an odds game, and you try to tell that to the owners. When you're trying to buy a horse, a young horse for somebody, or you're trying to buy a prospect, that there's tons of horses out there for sale. Ciphering through all that and finding something that you can work with, something that you feel is going to be a good fit for your non-pro or your amateur. It's tough, and we tend to lean more towards those cutting bloodlines because we know that the odds of them being a better horse or a horse that will cut will do that. And I've had some that have bred really well that just didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
You find another job for them. And, we sent a horse home. It was the beginning of this month. The horse was there for a month, and this horse just wasn't athletic enough to do it. It would stumble around. It was an older horse, not older, but it wasn't a 2-year-old. He should have had his feet under him. He should have been strong enough. But he had no desire whatsoever to do it. And I called the owner up and said, "Hey, listen, I'm sorry, but he's just not going to make it. I think it's best you come pick him up." And I've gotten more business by doing that type of thing than me keeping that horse for 6 months, trying to make it work, and it not working. Because people, I feel, respect that, hey, listen, this guy's not just going to here to take my money.
Yeah.
And there's people out there that'll do that, and that's unfortunate. But on the flip side of that, I've also sent horses home that I didn't think were going to do it, and they went to somebody else, and they got them to do it. And that horse just didn't fit me. One, we can send this horse to another trainer, and he might get along with it, because there's some horses that we just don't fit. You know, like it doesn't want my riding and my training on that horse than it is for that horse to adjust its, you know, its style. It's been doing this for a while. I can make that decision to change this or that, but sometimes they just don't fit. So we can either find another trainer to work with you and your horse, or we can sell that horse and get you another one. So it's really nice when you have those clients that are willing to, when they're looking for a new horse, say, hey, listen, I need you to find me this.
Yeah. You
know, find me something that's going to work for you, find me something that's going to work for me, and trusting us to go get that horse for him. Sometimes it makes it difficult when, you know, an owner goes out and buys a horse and brings it to you and say, hey, I just got this horse, you know, I need you to make it work. Because now we feel like, hey, we've got to try to, and let's say this horse isn't a very good horse, we've got to try to get them out of a bind that we didn't create.
Yeah.
But it happens, and, you know, we have other routes that we can go with these horses. That's one nice thing about us, you know, also being not real active, but kind of active in the sorting industry. You know, we have some sortings here, so people come through, they call us looking for sorting horses. So if this horse isn't going to make a cutter, we can usually find a home for it as a sorter. Sometimes, you know, they go to be rope horses or barrel horses, whatever. But it's nice having that option where we can do something else with them if this isn't the job for them.
Yeah. Going back a little bit to the like showing and stuff and being at shows, this is just me being curious. Are you guys waking up at like 2 a.m. to get in an open pen to school them at night and stuff like the Rainers do?
No. I mean, we might get up early.
Yeah.
So most of our shows don't start till about 8. Some start at 9. Usually, like if we're in Fort Worth for the Futurity, and let's say we're in that first set, I think the practice pen might open up at like 5 or 6.
Okay.
So we'll get there, we'll feed, you know. But I've been in the cutting pen at 6 a.m., but it's because the show went so long the night before. That was down in Florida. We were down there again this year, and it hasn't happened like that probably since that time I was there. But they have a winter circuit series that starts like, I don't know, 2 or 3 days after Christmas. So we would always have Christmas. The next day we'd load up and we'd head to Florida. And that first year I went down there, I mean, it was long. I mean, I think they made it a couple of days longer so that they could cut down how many classes they had in that day. But I remember walking to the herd and fireworks were going off because it was New Year's, and, you know, people were outside shooting guns and stuff.
Yeah.
But usually you don't have to get up that early. Now, in the only time that we're doing that is in the summer months. And I really enjoy it, is, you know, we might start work at midnight and we'll work till, you know, 8 a.m., 10 a.m., and then be done, because it's easier on the cattle. It's easier on the horses. Instead of working them when it's 95 degrees out, you know, we'll get them when it's 75.
Yeah.
And it's kind of nice because, you know, when you're working through the day, there's, you know, people calling you. You got to make phone calls. You got to run to this here. You got to run there. But nobody's calling you at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
You know, you can just focus on your job. It's pitch black. It's quiet. You know, you're just out there, you and your horse. It's nice.
Yeah. I kind of, not getting up at midnight, but did a little bit of that for a while. Like waking up, I don't know, 4 hours before I needed to, and go out and ride a horse or two before I go to work. No one else is up. You know, it's quiet, just like you and the horse out there just working. And that was like my favorite way to start my day, which now it sucks to think about doing that when it's like 10 degrees outside and pitch black the whole time. But yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah, I feel like some of my best works, and I mean, I had heard, I forget what podcast it was, but somebody else talking about this, and I'm like, yeah, that was me. Like, you know, I'm laying in bed at 3 a.m. and I can't sleep because, you know, whether people think about it or not, these horses are constantly on our mind. You know, like it's a constant strive for perfection and trying to figure out and get in these horses' heads. Like, you know, what are they thinking? Why are they acting like this? You know, and I'm laying in bed and I'm thinking, you know, like, what am I going to do with this horse? You know, like, what's the next step? What do I need to do to fix this issue? And something clicks, and you're like, you know, I haven't tried that. And I'm like, I throw my clothes on, go down, saddle the horse up, warm it up, and I have a fantastic ride because, you know, that's all I was thinking about at that time was that horse and where I needed to go and what that horse was thinking. And it just clicked and it worked. You know, and I feel like sometimes you got to do that. You know, like you've got to be out there by yourself in the middle of the night with no distractions just to get that, you know, get that one work in. And it's a good feeling when it comes together. You go back home and you sleep peacefully the rest of the night.
Yeah, I think I heard Chris Dawson talk about that kind of thing on Cowhorse Full Contact.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was.
Been the same thing, but yeah.
I don't think I listened to the whole thing, but I think I seen a clip of it on Facebook or something like that, where he was talking about that.
But
yeah, and I feel like most of us have done it. You know, most of us have done. You know, I think if you're passionate enough about it, you've done it.
Yeah.
So,
but do you want to talk about the cattle side at all? Not sure how much you do with it. We talked a little bit about how you kind of run your deal back at the barn, but to me, in general, the cattle side's cool. I don't know if you look at it as like part of the business or another way to potentially make money, or if it's just something you have to get your horses where they need to be. Or
well, I think there's days that it's both. There's days that I'm like, man, if I didn't have to have cattle, I wouldn't, because, you know, they're destructive. You know, they're always breaking something, or, you know, they're a pain in the butt. But then there's days like I really think that, man, you know, this would be the life if I could just train like 10 really good horses and have 200 head of cattle to take care of, you know, just ride my horse through them. And so there's a little bit of both. I mean, there's definitely potential to make money. It's really hard in this part of the country to find cattle, especially to find cattle to hold shows, you know, because we have to have fresh cattle. And it's hard finding those fresh cattle. And I spend a lot of time down in Texas. I've made some good friends down there that, you know, we spend a lot of time with, and it's great that I can just pick up the phone and call them, you know, if I need help with a horse, like if I can't figure something out, you know, making those contacts. I got some guys, you know, around here that I can do the same thing with. But down there, everybody, like, it's pretty easy to get a cattle lease, you know, like somebody will just send you a bunch of cattle just if you feed them. You know, some places that they'll supply the feed and the medication, you just take care of them, you know, so they don't have to pay somebody to do it. They'll let you use them and you just take care of them. And that's how it was. I think when I worked with Eddie was he got a load of cattle every couple of weeks, and we'd background those cattle, and then we'd get to use them. And then when they got to a certain weight, they'd ship out and new loads would come in, and we just constantly had fresh cattle coming through, and it didn't cost anything but the time to feed them. Yeah. You can't find that up here, you know, and I think part of it is people think that you're running the cattle. You know, you're just chasing cattle everywhere, when really that's not what we do. Like, we don't want to run anywhere. Yeah. You know, we want to keep these cattle as quiet and as calm and fat as we can. Now with our sorting cattle, they get ran, but I have a completely different set of cattle for my sorting cattle most of the time. You know, a lot of people do their sorting on like Longhorns or Corriente cattle, you know, because those things, they don't gain a bunch of weight and they run around forever. So cattle's definitely a struggle up here, and I have to own all my own cattle. You know, like we can't find a lease, you know, where someone's going to supply us with a potload of cattle every month. I'm working trying to find that. Yeah. That would be great if I did. But some things that we do to combat that is what we call shocker cattle. And I don't know, did you see my cattle up there today? But I have two. One's like a dairy cross with something, and one's a Brahma cross. That Pro Cutter has a device called a motivator. And it's basically like a saddle that you strap on these cows, and you teach these cows to move off your voice. So I yell, and the cow moves, and you kind of train them that way. So I train a lot of my horses, you know, off that cow, because it saves my fresh cattle that I can use right before the show or leading up to the show, or if I have lessons or clinics, I can use those cattle, you know, because those cattle are trained. So getting, you know, if a beginner comes in here and wants to cut and learn to cut, I could waste a lot of fresh cattle having that beginner come in here and just learn the basics, and they'll actually sour that cow, because that cow's learning how to beat that horse. It's learning how to get around that horse. So my shocker cow isn't going to try really hard to get around you. If you're in position or close to that position, it's going to stay away. Mm-hmm. So it's a great opportunity that I can get those beginners out there on a softer cow that they can learn that flow and being in the right position. We use the mechanical flag for that. We actually have a hydro bull. I don't know if you've probably seen it up at the end. Did you see that cow that you sit in and drive?
Yeah.
We have that. We don't use that too often. I'm hoping we can start using it a little more this year because we have more people working for us. But the problem when I got it was there was only 2 of us working. I was riding the horse. I had to have somebody inside it driving it. Well, then I didn't have somebody getting the next horse ready.
Yeah.
So it just strung out our day.
Yeah.
But there's a real cow, what they call it, which is actually like a model or foam cow on top of a bomb squad robot that drives back and forth across the arena, and like you have the control on your thumb.
Yeah.
It's a really great tool. They're expensive. I think they're like $25,000. But if you spread that out over 10 years and think of how much money in cattle that could save you, like it'll probably pay for itself pretty quick, because that's probably one of the most in demand and expensive thing in our industry, besides going out and buying a horse, is fresh cattle. It's just tough to find. It's tough for show producers, and that's one of the reasons we don't have a bunch of shows, I believe, up here in the Northeast is cattle.
You don't have the cattle numbers.
Yeah, and they'll rent cattle to a show for $35 to $55 a head in Texas, and up here we're paying $85 to $110, with trucking to get them to a show. And our shows are more expensive up here because those cattle cost so much more. So if I'm using 3 cows in a class and let's, for math's sake, say they cost $100, well, that's $300 for that guy to go in there and show his horse. If it's a 4-year-old class and there's 3 fresh cows in there per horse. So there's $300 just before you enter in the office fees and the jackpot money, the money that gets paid back out to the competitors. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the associations take a little bit so that they can keep, the association going.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a struggle. I'm on the Pennsylvania Cutting Horse Association board, and it's something that we're always conscientious about, is like, how can we make our shows cheaper? How can we make it more affordable? And it's something that, we haven't found a real good answer for, because it's tough finding, good fresh cattle in our industry or our area. We have 400 head of cattle per show. I don't know too many people that run 400 head of cattle, and not just 400 head, but we have 3 or 4 shows throughout the year. So now, we're up in 2,000 head of cattle pretty quick.
Yeah.
So that's tough. And the other thing that, talking about expenses here is the horse market has really taken off. Horses have gotten more expensive, and a lot of people think, well, this is really good for the horse industry. And it might be if you're breeding and selling horses. But for me as a trainer, it's kind of came to something that we have to try to somehow overcome. And because horses have gotten expensive to where it's tough getting new people into the sport. Not everybody can go out there and buy a cutting horse and leave it in training and foot that bill because they've gotten so expensive. So what I've seen is an influx in like younger horses coming into training. Somebody can't afford to go out and buy that 5 or 6-year-old cutter or 7-year-old cutter to start cutting right away, but they can spend a little bit and then afford the monthly payment of having it in training, so that hopefully they have something that they can go show in a year or 2. So it's been neat. When I first started doing this, I kind of liked the older finished horses that I could, get fixed if they had an issue and go show them. And now I've been starting to get into the younger limited age type horses, and I really like that aspect of it. And I've almost seen a little shift in our business going to that. And I don't know if it's because I'm doing more of it, or if it's because people are only able to afford the younger horses and spend the money to put them in training.
Yeah. No, it's cool to hear someone say that and have that perspective on it, because all you do hear is like, well, this is good for the industry. Horse prices keep going up and all that. But someone in my position, like you said, like I can't go buy a finished whatever, reiner, cutter, cow horse. Like, that's just not my budget, but it's something that I want to get into, and like have got into the reining a little bit, but you know, I totally get that, and part of the reason why I'm trying to, you know, figure out this stuff. And luckily I like riding 2-year-olds and starting horses and stuff, so it is appealing to me to buy something younger and maybe, you know, be able to do it myself. But I can definitely relate to that and see that side of it being hard for new people to get into the industry because of how much money you need to have to do it.
Yeah, and that's a goal of mine, is to get new people into the industry. Not only for the industry, but for my business as well. You know, like we need new people coming in. We need, you know, it's cheaper if 10 people are going to a show than if one person's going to the show. Mm-hmm. You know, so I want my non-pros to do well. I want them to want to come do this, and I try to keep my billing as cheap as I possibly can, you know, without, you know, breaking myself, because obviously I have a family to feed as well, and I want to retire someday. But it's a very tough balance between, you know, making money and keeping it cheap, you know, so that your clients are able to go to the show, because I'll go anywhere, you know, like, and I always tell my clients that, like, listen, if this is what's on my radar is show wise, you know, like I start making a list as soon as all the show dates come out, and these are the ones that I'd like to go to. If there's anything outside of this that you guys want to go to, just let me know, and I'll try to find, you know, if any other clients are interested in doing it. You know, we go down to Texas in April. That they have the National Circuit Championships down there. We're in the Appalachian Circuit here, so they take the top 10 from the Appalachian Circuit, are able to go down and compete in the National Circuit finals in Texas. And my guys love doing it. You know, they love going down to Fort Worth, and they love showing down there. And we try to take as many down there as possible, because it's a good time, and we all go out to dinner and hang out, and they get to see, you know, the other side of things, you know, because the Super Stakes, I think, is going on at that time. And, you know, they get to see those limited age horses and, you know, the top guys in the world doing it. And it's kind of a motivation thing for them, you know, like they get to go see that. And I encourage everybody to go do it if they can, because it's not as scary as what everybody thinks. You know, everybody thinks, oh, well, we can't compete in Texas. We can't compete. Like, it's just as tough down there as it is up here. Honestly, I think sometimes it's a little easier because their cattle are a little better. You know, we have fast cattle up here, and they're pushy and stuff. And down there, you know, it just seems they got the best cattle, they got the best footing, you know, they got the best horses kind of in that area, you know, and it's just a pool of things, you know, like there's way more cutting horses in Texas, so there's way more opportunity to have nice ones. But it's not as scary as what everybody thinks it is. Now, the first time you walk in that Will Rogers, it can be intimidating. Yeah. But it's just like anywhere else, you know, the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. I tell my clients all the time, like, you can't go play golf once a month and expect to get good. You know, like, you've got to ask yourself the same questions. What did I do today to make myself a better cutting horse client or shower, or a better showman or better rider, whatever. Like, it's a constant pursuit of, you know, perfection. And I encourage my clients to come take lessons. You know, I give free lessons, one free lesson a week to my clients. Like, you just come, like, I want you to do well. Yeah. And I have clients that, you know, sometimes they can't afford, you know, a second lesson or whatever. They'll come clean stalls and help out. Just help out. I have one guy that's local who will come turn back all day for me so that he gets an extra lesson, or out. He doesn't keep his horse in training, so he'll come turn back all day. I'll work his horse that day. Yeah. You know, there's ways you can get around, you know, because there's always stuff to be done on a cutting horse farm. You know, whether it be fixing a fence or feeding cattle or cleaning stalls or cooling out horses or warming up. There's ways to do it, and most people will work with you. Mm-hmm. So,
but if you want to take a quick break, I think now might be a good time for that. So
sure.
All right, we should be back. So just there, during that little break, talked a little bit about wrecks and that sort of stuff, and you mentioned some pretty gnarly or good ones that some of your helps had, if you want to talk about that.
Well, we'll talk about the most recent one. So I hired an assistant trainer probably, well, I think we just talked about it a year ago this month. He was kind of fed up with his job, and he was kind of coming down and helping me out here and there, and pretty good hand. He had a little buckskin horse that he trained himself, and he was sorting on and doing well and had a really good handle, and he got kind of fed up with his job, and he called me one day and he said, hey, I'm thinking about quitting my job and just riding horses. He said, what do you think? I said, well, if you could stay busy, I'll try to send you stuff, that I don't want to ride or that, I don't have time to ride. I'll send it to you, and, we'll see what we can do. And we hung up the phone, and I started talking with my girlfriend and told her what he said. We were talking there. I'm like, you know what? Why don't I just hire him? Why doesn't he just come work for me instead of me sending my horses there for him to start? Because I start horses, ones that are specifically, going to be in my program and going to stay with me to go show at the Futurity or to go show as 3 or 4 year olds. I usually will start those. But the risk of starting, a bunch of other stuff, it just outweighs the reward. If I'm going to have the horse for 90 days and then it's going to go somewhere else, well, why am I going to take all that risk if that horse isn't going to be with me for that time? So I thought, well, I'll just talk to him, and we'll, because he was a good friend of mine, and I didn't want business to come in between our friendship.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be, I didn't want to have to get after him for this or get after him for that, so I wanted to sit down and talk with him and make sure we had an understanding of what was going to be expected out of him, what was expected out of me, this and that, so that we didn't ruin our friendship over business. Mm-hmm. And so far it's worked out. So I hired him, and I told him, he told me what he needed to be paid. I said, all right, I can do that, I think. But I would love for you to have a barn full of cutters, to go ride, to start for me and work as 2 year olds and then hand them over to me and I take them and finish them. I said, but until we get to that point, you're going to be riding everything and anything that we get. I had a Gypsy Vanner in here for him. I've had, I think, Mustangs. I don't care what it is. If somebody wants it broke, he's going to ride it. Yep. And he's like, yeah, that's fine, because that's what he was doing anyway. He was taking horses here and there and dealing with them, or training them, fixing the issues. And he said, yeah, that's fine. So I hired him. And then last year we had a horse come in, a big ranch horse. Was actually there for just a tune-up. It wasn't anything, that needed started. Wasn't the horse's fault. Wasn't Hunter's fault. He's just going across the pen and went to turn the horse, and when he did, the horse stumbled in the back end, fell down, flipped over on him, and snapped his leg. He was out for, I think it was 10 weeks. And then he came back to work, and he still kind of gimps around here and there, but he's back to riding and starting 2 year olds. And he's started, I don't know, several so far this winter for us. Does a really good job for us. Very, very happy he's on our crew. We have a really good crew right now. Rebecca Truax with Truax Performance Horses has been helping us out. She's actually had some wrecks for me, or not for me, but while she was working for me. When Rebecca started for me, she could not ride at all. She had trail rode a little bit, but did not know anything about the performance horse world. Basically the same story as me, but just more or less experienced than what I was. So it was kind of nice. There wasn't a lot of bad habits to break. But it was a long process, a long road. She's a very upbeat, giggly, happy all the time, which sometimes can be frustrating. At 2 o'clock in the morning, she's bebopping down the barn singing. I'm like, what do you have to be so happy about right now? But she didn't have that feel for horses when she first started. So we'd be warming horses up in the arena, and she'd be laughing and joking or singing or whatever. I'm like, you better be paying attention. That thing's getting ready to buck. And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, that thing is going to start bucking. And sure enough, there it'd go start bucking. And she's like, how do you know that? I said, well, you just got to feel it. Yeah. Like I can see that horse start to hump up, and it's starting to tell you it doesn't like what's going on right now. It's going to give you a little reminder of what you're riding. But the first horse that she got hurt on, we were trail riding. Like we had taken, an owner wanted us to take a horse out and just see how it did on the trails. And she was riding a horse of mine, actually, that never give any problems whatsoever. And all of a sudden I hear some yelling, and she's laying on a tree down in the woods. And I'm like, what happened? She's like, I don't know. He started bucking. But she didn't have that feel at that time. So she broke her ribs there. Then we were training a barrel horse, or we were breaking a barrel horse for somebody. I think this was the second one. I might have the second and third mixed up, but we were breaking a barrel horse for somebody. It was a little Cremello stud. And she's riding it, and I'm working a stud horse on the flag at the time. A metallic cat sun, and I'm working the horse on the flag, and I hear you, what do I do? What do I do? And I turn around, and this horse is bucking. And I said, well, just stay on, which was really good advice. And she didn't listen to it. So she fell off in front of that horse, like kind of up over its head, and it continued to buck in one spot and on top of her. And so she gets bucked off. She's laying on the ground, the horse dancing on top of her. All these weird noises came out of her. I thought that's it. Like, she's done. I jump off my horse. It's a stud also, so I go tie it up because I didn't want two studs running around the arena. As I get to her, she kind of rolls over on her knees. She picks up a handful of sand and looks at me, and there's blood just rolling out of her mouth, missing teeth in the front, throws the sand on the ground and says, why can't I stay on these things? I'm paraphrasing there. There might be some other things that came out of her mouth. She jumps up and takes off running at this stud like a banshee. She gets to it, and the Cremello's, real white. Goes to grab the reins. There's blood all over her hands. It looks like an Indian war horse's, all painted up from these handprints. I get a hold of her. I'm like, listen, we're going to the hospital. She's like, no, we're not. I'm getting on this thing. I'm like, listen, we can get on it later. We're going to the hospital. So I take her to the hospital, and they get her all doped up on drugs and get her taken care of. And I think she broke some ribs and I don't know what else, had the teeth knocked out. But it was definitely an experience. And then the other time that she got bucked off was we had a young horse in training, never had spurs on. And I told her, I said, don't ride this horse with spurs. So I'm working a horse in the round pen, and she's riding outside the round pen. And all of a sudden I see her get off this horse, and I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, I forgot. Like, I had my spurs on. I said, well, you've been riding him for 15 minutes with spurs on. Like, if he's okay with it, he's okay with it. She's like, all right. So she gets back on. Well, she's riding him around. It was a windy day, and the bottom part of the banner in one of our sponsor banners in the arena, I guess, wasn't tied down, and the wind blew that banner and flipped it up. Well, it spooked that horse. That horse lunged, and when it lunged, she grabbed a hold to stay on, and when it felt them spurs grab a hold, it came undone. Bucked straight down towards the wall, and when it got to the wall, it made a hard right and just basically came out from under her. She fell straight down on her butt, and she got up. I knew there was something wrong. Like, she's all hunched over, and she's making weird noises again. I'm like, go to the house. She goes to the house. I take care of the horses. Come up. She's like on her knees in front of the couch with her upper body laying on the couch. And I say, you all right? She doesn't say anything. I'm like, Becca, are you okay? Doesn't say anything. I walk up and touch her on the back and like just screams in pain. And then every bump we hit on the way to the emergency room, she was screaming. But yeah, those are the bad wrecks. Like, knock on wood, I haven't had anything that's been bad. But yeah, between Hunter and her, like, those are the two.
Yeah. Yeah. I've also been pretty lucky, knock on wood, so far. Aside from at a bronc school with a markout horse that smashed me in the chute. Wasn't supposed to. Didn't have a neck rope on him or anything. He reared straight back up over, but yeah, that's my worst one. So, but always I don't know, always interesting hearing those stories, and sometimes people forget it is kind of a dangerous business, I think. So
yeah, and I often I see some people doing the ranch bronc stuff now, and I'm like, man, I'd really like to do that, but then I talk myself out of it because I'm like, I can't get hurt, I can't go do that stuff anymore. I rode some bulls in the past. I was not good at it. I was no means. I would never call myself a bull rider. I got on bulls, but I was not a rider. But I actually screwed my knee up doing that, and I'd like to do it, but I pretty quickly talked myself out of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I got on 2 bulls, quickly said not for me, and then wanted to try the saddle bronc thing, and I got on a handful of head, but not enough to really even know if I was good at it. But in the back of my head, I'm like, man, if I know so many people that got banged up doing that stuff, and I want to make sure that I can ride every day. You know what I mean? Versus get on a bronc and be out for how long. So
right.
But just pivoting from that, do you want to go into a typical day?
Yeah, so it kind of varies by the time of the year and what we're getting ready for. But in the wintertime, typically I try to work my younger horses first. That's when we're getting a lot of younger horses in. They're coming their 2-year-old year. So I'll try to get those younger horses worked first. That way, if for some reason things don't go right, I can let them, stand around, think about what happened, and get them out later in the day again, so I can get 2 works on them. But I'll work my young horses first, and then I'll go into my show horses, my seasoned horses. Then typically, if I have to go back into something, or then I can stick around, help Becca watch her. I can help Hunter watch him, Usually when we're putting those first rides on those horses, we always try to have 2 people there, whether we have a pony horse or somebody on the ground in the round pen moving the horse. It's great that we have, different people there and different trainers there that we can kind of help each other out and work together. I know we kind of touched on that in hers, but, that's huge, been a huge plus for our business. There's not too many people or too many trainers around here that I feel have that, where there's things that I feel Becca really excels at. If I need a horse softened, or I need a horse just needs to take a step back and decompress a little bit, I can put her on that horse and say, hey Becca, take this horse for 2 weeks, or take this horse for a month and just work it. And she does a fantastic job for me, where let's say I need a horse to just be it's bronchi or this or that. I put Hunter on that horse and say, hey, just go use this horse for a while. We had a stud horse here that it just wasn't serious about his job. And I told Hunter, I said, Hunter, you take this horse, and I said, you use him like a ranch horse. You turn back on him, you get cattle with him, you just use this horse.
Yeah, give him a job.
Give him a job, other than the cutting. Just go use him. And that horse came back to me with a different mentality. It was like, yeah, I'll go cut because that other stuff sucks.
Yeah.
And, that was good for that horse. It turned a corner, and being able to have those 2 people in my corner to where I can say, hey, go do this or go do that with this horse. And they do the same thing. If Becca's having trouble with one of her cutting horses, she can bring it to me and say, hey, do you mind getting on this thing and tell me what you feel? Or would you watch me working on the flag and tell me where I need to go next? Or, this or that. And Hunter said, hey, I'm having problems with this 2-year-old. I just can't get it to turn to the right very well. It turns to the left fine. To the right, it's not working. And I can't remember if we had touched on this earlier, that if that's the case, this horse turning right, turning left, it does. If the horse comes out and has been willing for us for the last month, and then one day it decides that it's not going to turn to the left, usually that's a pain issue. Yeah. It's not a training issue where that horse just hasn't decided, screw you today, I'm going to do what I want. So we really try to focus on, all right, it didn't want to turn left today, let's see how tomorrow goes. And then after that, we're like, all right, let's look at, does it need a chiropractor? Does it need dental? Is it, sore somewhere? really try to focus on how that horse is feeling. And that was a big thing for us in our business, was when we really started understanding that, these things will give you more when they feel better.
Yeah.
It took our training to the next level. So then in the summertime, we kind of work things a little different because of the heat. Whether we work at night, which we'll do when things get hot, we might start at 12 or 3 a.m., depending on how busy our day is. But I try to get the show horses done first, or the horses that I'm going to work on cattle done first. That way it's easier on the cattle, it's easier on the horses, they're not getting as hot. And then I'll go into my younger stuff. But at that time, my younger stuff's already had 6 months on it, that I usually don't have to work them twice in that day, just to get those, the young stuff, the stuff that's smaller, we'll put short rides on them. They might get rode twice a day for 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Rather than one 30-minute session or 40-minute session. We try to keep our works as short as possible, get what we need done, and get off. But sometimes you've got to, instead of working for 20 minutes, you end up stringing it out to an hour because you can't quit when that horse is on the wrong thing or not doing what we need it to do. Sometimes we got to step back and go to a step before that, and all right, well, let's reassure it here and then go ask it again. So getting multiple rides on those horses a day sometimes is what we have to do. We try not to, but if that's what we need, that's what we have to do. So we'll get our show horses worked in the summer, then we'll go to our younger stuff, work them on the flag, cattle, whatever we need to do. Then after that, typically we'll take care of cattle, do maintenance, and then our lessons start rolling in the afternoon, evenings. The tough part about our business is, we work Monday through Friday, usually like everybody else, but a lot of our clients are farther away, so they have to come for lessons on a weekend. So there's times that we don't get a day off for 2 months in a row because we're working every day because clients are coming Saturdays, Sundays, or in the evenings. We might start at 7 a.m. or 3 a.m. Like there was times last summer that we started at 3 a.m. to get all of our horses worked, but then we had to stick around because we had clients coming at 6 p.m.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So, that's a tough thing. And a lot of times when I get asked about, people wanting jobs, or I need somebody and I put out there that, hey, we're looking to hire, they're like, well, what's the hours? I'm like, well, you never know. Yeah. We could work 6 hours today and we might work 15 tomorrow. It's a farm, and if we're getting ready to leave and we look in the field and there's cows out, well, guess what? Nobody's going home. We got to go get these cows and get the fence fixed.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing for people to understand.
Yeah. So if someone listened to that and, got excited by it and think they want to do this, do you have any advice for them? And kind of pivoting from that too, advice for someone that, is thinking they want to get into cutting. Listen to this, think it sounds cool, want to have that feeling of putting your hand down and letting a horse go to work. What's some advice you have for either of those situations?
So if you want to get into this as a trainer, I think your best option is to find somebody that you can go work with. You might not get paid. You might work for them, if you have free times in the evening, go down and help them out, or on weekends, or, there's always something to do. Get yourself exposed to it as much as possible. This is a lifestyle. It's not really a job. Like, you got to kind of live it. I don't think that a college is going to prepare you for this. Like, I've had many people come through that have went to different colleges for equine studies of some sort, and I don't feel like it gives them the work ethic. It doesn't give them the experience, and I've never once had somebody come in here and say, we want you to train our horse. Can you show me your college degree? They want to see what you've done, who you've worked for, what are your results.
Yeah.
I'm not telling people not to go to college because, I think that it's for some people and for some people it's not. But if you're going to go to college, and you want to be in the horse industry, I would go with marketing or some sort of business school to prepare you for the business side of things. And that was one thing that I had to learn kind of on my own, was the business side of things. I'd been around the horses, I'd worked the horses, but nothing prepared me for the business side of things. No one prepared me to talk to clients, to know that, excuse me, what the commissions were and like what's typical, and that's something that we talk about with other trainers and, kind of keep things on the same page. But that's something that you're not going to get in a college, that you just have to have real world experience. So go find that trainer that is willing to help you. Find that trainer that's, willing to spend the time with you, but you're going to have to work for it. We're not going to say, yeah, here, go work this show horse.
Yeah.
We're going to say, all right, you're going to start out cleaning stalls. And if you show me you can clean stalls and you're going to give 100% effort and be proud of what you did, now we're going to let you saddle horses. All right. And if the horses come down to me in the arena and they're saddled correctly and, the girth's not all up on one side and the saddle pad's kicked out the back, all right, well, now we know that you can handle that. We're going to give you something else.
Yeah.
But just like, these horses, we're not going to overwhelm you with information day one. I'm not going to teach you about softening horses and getting the ribs out of the way. And on day one, you've got to prove to me that you're willing to put in the work and that you're going to be dedicated and disciplined in your job. Because our time's valuable. People pay us, like right now we're at $100 for a lesson. People pay us $100 to come here and get a lesson from us because of our experience and the knowledge that we have. And here you want me to pay you to give you the same amount of knowledge. It's, it's hard for us to to get over sometimes. Like, you've got to show me that you can provide me a service before I'm going to give you my time in teaching you that thing.
Yeah, I think showing that pride in your work is a huge thing, even if it is that crappy job for, pun kind of intended, cleaning stalls. They should be spotless. I always looked at it like someone is paying for their horse to be there. If they show up, they expect that stall to be clean. So clean it like it's your own. You know what I mean?
I agree 100%. And you don't want them standing around in their own urine, because then you get feet issues, and that's what the horse stands on. And I've said to Becca and to my other employees multiple times, like, if we want people to bring us high-valued show horses, and if we want to have them, it needs to look like this place deserves to have them. Now we don't have a state-of-the-art facility. As of now, we don't even have an indoor on this property. We have an indoor, but we're getting ready to build one. But the things that we do have, we need to take care of. The place needs to look good. It needs to look, like a show horse should be here.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So you've got to take pride in that. Like, my employees pick on me constantly about my yard. I don't let anybody mow it. I mow it. Because I want straight lines. I want it to look nice. But that's something that I take pride in. Like, I want things to look nice. We have flower beds, and we try to keep things looking as nice as possible. Keep the aisleways swept. Stalls clean. Horses. And this was that short time that I was out in Oklahoma working getting ready for the futurity and their facility. I loved it. It was a really nice facility, but that lady told me, she's like, I want my horses to look at any point in time during the day. Somebody could pull in here and say, hey, I'm looking at buying a horse, and I could take them down this barn aisle and every horse is ready to show to a client. Like they scrubbed the hooves off after every work. They braided tails and washed and braided tails after every work. Every horse was in, great condition that you could pull it out of a stall and show it to somebody who's looking to buy. Yeah. And that, we really want to do that. We want to keep these horses looking good. Now, it's very tough this time of year in the winter, because, we don't have a heated wash bay, so you can't bath horses, consistently. But that doesn't mean that we can't have tails braided and then brushed and then, the stalls looking clean, like our tack's taken care of, and like everything looks like we take pride in what we do. Yeah. So getting back on track here, I ramble. Go find that trainer. Go find that trainer that you can work with. If you want him to give you something, you're going to have to give him your time. You're going to have to, spend the time, listen to what he's saying. Don't put your 2 cents in, I guess, unless he asks for it. Like, if he says, hey, I want you to go do this, go do it, and do it the best that you can. And don't be afraid to ask questions. I really can't remember if we talked about this, but why is my favorite question. When you start asking that why, Well, why do we want their tail braided? Why do we want, them looking good? Why do we want the saddle this way? Why do we want to use this bit? Why do we,
Yeah.
That shows me that you want to know why we do it and you want to understand why we do it so that you can do a better job. That's the route that I would go. I would find that trainer, go look for him, spend some time with him, and just immerse yourself in the lifestyle. Like I have no problem recommending, hey, go watch this video on YouTube or go do this or do that. That's big. Like we had talked in Becca's podcast, like I can teach you everything except for that work ethic and that pride.
Yeah.
You've got to have pride in what you do, pride in yourself, pride in the job that you deliver. I can teach you how to ride. I can teach you how to wrap legs and hose off horses and saddle. You've got to come with that, and that you're going to show me that you're going to give me 110% all the time. As a client coming and wanting to get into cutting, wanting to learn to ride cutting horses, I would kind of almost give the same advice. Like, get around the trainer that you want to work with. Spend some time with him. Come work with him for a little bit. Clean stalls, see how he takes care of his animals, see the pride that he takes in what he does. Ask him questions, If you're looking to go get a horse, go to your trainer. Go to that trainer that you plan on working with to find you that horse, because he's found a lot of horses for a lot of people most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
He probably has one or two horses that he can put you on to see how you get along with that. Like, do you get along with a horse that you have to push across the pen or one that you don't have to put your feet on? How that horse stops and turns compared to what your riding ability is. He's going to find something that's going to work for you and him both that he can, get along with, because that's our number one goal, is to get you in that winner's circle. We want you to win. We want you to be successful. It's not about us being out there and showing that horse and being successful, which we want to do. And we know that you want us to do that because, then it's a lot cheaper on your pocketbook. But how long is that going to last?
Yeah.
Like, people buy horses because they want to ride them. They want to see them. Like, young horses, it's very tough to get those clients on because they're not seasoned. They're not, solid in what they know. But like, a lot of times we'll have an older horse for a client, and then we'll have a younger horse. They take lessons on the older horse. They show the older horse while we're bringing the young horse up. And then when they're ready to retire that older horse or breed that older horse or sell it, now that young one's ready and been seasoned for them. It's a great way to do it. Some people even have practice horses, like they don't want to work their show horse today, but they're going to bring their practice horse if they keep it home, and they might work on the flag or just, that way they can keep in tune that their show horse is always ready to go show. Their practice horse, they can make the mistakes on, fix, excuse me. We want to teach you how to ride these horses. We want you to be able to know when they're making a mistake and how to fix it, because that's just going to make my job easier.
Yeah.
If I say, hey, you need to pull on your horse on this side and make him draw a little bit more, I want you to be able to go do that. I want you to feel when you do it and why you do it. That way it's going to make my job 100 times easier. A lot of people I feel worry about, well, if I teach them how to ride it, well, then they're just going to take the horse home. Well, they could take the horse home and they can ride it, but they're not going to go out and buy 40 head of cattle. They're not going to go buy a flag. They're not going to go put in an arena and all the cattle handling stuff, and then they don't have that second pair of eyes watching them. So I really don't see that as a concern as much as I see, I want you to be able to ride your horse, fix your horse, be able to get your horse out of a sticky situation in a show pen, so find that trainer that's going to help you achieve your goals. We talked about some goals that we've got to be on the same page. Like, if you want to go do rein cow horse and you come to me, I'm like, hey buddy, I don't do rein cow horse. Like, I can help you with the herd work, but our goals don't align. And we get that. We get some rein cow horse people that come and like they'll send their horse in the winter to get tuned up into the herd work part of it, or they'll come work on, hey, how do I improve my score in the herd work? And we'll help them with that because that's very similar to cutting. So, we can help you, but we're also going to try to find you a rein cow horse trainer that can can help you.
Yeah.
You know, I have no problem making those recommendations to people. And then communication between you and your trainer. You know, make sure that you're communicating. Tell them, you know, this is what I expect. Now, it might not mesh 100%, you know, but communicate. If we don't know there's a problem, we can't fix the problem. Just like same with us, you know, if we're having an issue, you know, because you keep doing this or you do that on your horse and it's causing issues with your horse or it's, you know, detrimental to his training or whatever, like we've got to nicely be able to step up and say, hey, listen, like we probably shouldn't be doing this because of X, Y, and Z. It's definitely something that I feel like I've constantly got to keep working at and improving at, but it's very important. So find that trainer you can communicate with, find that trainer that wants to help you achieve your goals and is willing to help you work towards them.
Yeah, I think that's all really good advice. Going back a little bit to like someone that thinks they might want to be a trainer, and you said like, you know, talked about college and stuff like that. I think if you view that time working for someone as your college, one, it's going to be a lot cheaper. If anything, you might make money compared to college. Like they start getting paid doing it. And just kind of treating it like college too. You know, you start out your cleaning stalls. Well, that's your gen eds, you know, that's the classes everyone has to take no matter what. You learn the basics and then kind of work your way up till you're taking your, you know, major specific courses. That's where you're really learning that discipline and like the knowledge that trainer has that they've put the time in to get, they're passing on to you, to be able to start your own program if that's the way you want to go. But I think that was all really, really good advice on both fronts there.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And that's kind of how I looked at it when I was working. Like I'm getting paid to learn a skill that I'm going to be able to go out and make money doing.
Yeah.
You know, and if you go to college, like I said, I'm not deterring anyone from going, but if you go to college or a trade school or whatever, like you're not getting that. You know, you're paying them to go there and learn. And then I still have to go get a job after school to, you know, make money to pay my rent or whatever. And when we get interns or we get people that, you know, apprentices that want to come in, like I'm more than happy to work with them. Like they're like, hey, we want to come work with you. You know, I've talked to my local Tractor Supply and said, hey, listen, if we get an intern that wants to come in here and work, you know, they're going to work from, let's say 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. for me. Would you be willing to hire them in the evening from 5 to whatever, you know, just so that they got some money coming in, or, you know, on weekends or weekdays? Like right now we're kind of looking for somebody that works Thursday through Monday. So they'd have Tuesday, Wednesday off because we're away a lot at shows on the weekends. So we really need someone here on the weekends, you know, just basic cleaning stalls, feeding, and then just maintenance and taking care of stuff while we're gone so that everything still stays the way it needs to. And they're like, yeah, absolutely. Like we have plenty of people around, you know, through our networking that if people need hours here or there, you know, to get paid to do something, like we can help them achieve that.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to talk a little bit more about kind of networking and the importance of that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Networking for us is huge. You know, like we have, in my eyes, have built a strong group of people that are willing to work with us, that are willing to help us find, you know, the horses that we need. If we have horses for sale, you know, we can call them and say, this is what we got, you know, because they're constantly having people looking for horses, or we're looking for horses, or even training questions, or like, I just need to get my horses out. You know, like, we try not to just train here at home all the time. We like to load them up and go somewhere and get those horses exposed to different areas, different cattle, you know, different footings. So, and even in the show pen, you know, like I have trainers that I work with that are, you know, really good and help us out that they don't need to. But they're just very generous and very kind that way. You know, I have a buddy in Oklahoma, Pedro. I mean, he's like a brother to me. We talk several times a week. If I need a horse or if he needs a horse, you know, we call and tell each other what we have for sale. If I, you know, well, hey, I might have a client for that. I got a guy looking for a sorter, or I got a guy looking for a limited age cutter, or this or that, a futurity horse. you know, I spent 30 days living in his house last year. You know, he doesn't have to do that. You know, he's not getting paid to do that. And the offer extends to him also, you know, like he never comes up here, but if he would, you know, yeah, here's stalls, here's my house, you know, and he gets on my horses, I'll get on his horses while we're down there working together. We travel around to pre-works together, like, you know, great friend, you know, we met at a cutting show. Like, I actually beat him, but I honestly thought that he beat me, but the judge liked my horse better than his that day, and I just told him, I'm like, hey, Ben, that was a fantastic run. I really would have placed you above me. He's like, man, I really appreciate that, and, you know, because that means a lot to, you know, to somebody that, you know, I didn't have to tell him that I thought he beat me, or I didn't have to tell him that I liked his horse, and I did, and since then, man, we've struck a great friendship. He's helped me out a ton. You know, if I have a problem with a horse, I can send him a video or just pick up the phone and say, man, I'm having problems here. And he'll be like, hey, why don't you try this? You know, Paul Waslam's been a huge help to us. He's let us come down there and work. Tracy Barton's helped me out a million times being a better showman. Like, I think Tracy's a great showman. And he's just given me some great pointers, some great advice that, you know, has taken my game to the next level. We even got some non-pros, you know, that have their own cattle or buffalo or whatever that have invited us out to work at their place. You know, we've got to be able to work together in this and have a network of people that we can call upon to help us, you know, even though we're competing against each other, even though, you know, we're all trying to get to that next level. That's how we do it. You know, that's how we all can work together and build this industry, you know, where it's just even more enjoyable for our clients when we go to a show and they see that, man, these trainers don't hate each other. Like, they're trying to beat each other, but they don't hate each other, you know, and that just creates a more laid back, welcoming atmosphere when, you know, I've had many trainers talk to my clients after a run and say, hey, listen, like, you should probably do this, or you should probably do that, or, you know, maybe sit a little bit deeper on this side, you know. And I'm like, yeah, fantastic. Like, they're like, I hope you don't mind. I'm like, no, like, tell, if you're going to help them win, sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
And that's huge. You know, it's a great part of this business that we can kind of be, you know, like, we'll go out to dinner together, like me and other trainers and their clients and my clients. It just creates a excuse me, a family-like atmosphere where people are excited to go to these shows and see their friends and learn and talk with other trainers and other clients, and, you know, like, we'll have a barbecue afterwards or whatever, you know. It is really taught me a lot about myself and everybody else, and I really appreciate the people that have invested their time in me.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear how everyone kind of works together, and, you know, it makes everyone better in the end. So, like I said, that's just really awesome. If you want to pivot from that again, you talked a little bit earlier about goals and the importance of that, like talking to someone that wants to get into this or whatever. So what are your goals going forward?
Well, I mean, I think goals are very important. We hand out a goal sheet at every one of our clinics, and I try to have people set, like, goals for that day, for that weekend, like, goals for 2 weeks from now, a month from now, the next year, the next 5 years, and setting those small individual goals and making a plan, either with yourself or with your trainer, to attain those goals, I think is huge. You know, I've had a little bit of time now to think about these. And I have reached a lot of my goals that I had first, you know, set out to do. There's still some more that I want to, you know, I want to work towards. I'd like to have some more limited age horses. You know, when I first started, I wanted the show horses, the weekend show horses, the stuff, you know, that I could get out there and go show. And now it's kind of shifted to where I like those young horses that I can take from nothing and make into something and go show them, you know, at the big, you know, week or limited age events. So I'd like to Like that's a goal of mine, is to get more of those horses in, to be able to train and understand a lot more of those horses. I would really like to show at South Point. I've never been to Vegas, and that just seems like a cool place to go show. I'd really like to go show there. We had talked a little bit in Becca's podcast about making, a long-term goal would be making this place a one-stop shop, where you can come here and maybe we have a rein cow horse trainer. We're the cutting trainers. Hunter does a little bit of roping. He's not a team roper or a competitive roper, but like he'll get these horses broke so you can go catch cows. You can drag cows on them. We have people that'll send us horses that want us, teach them to track, and a rope being thrown off of them. So when you bring us one of these ranch type or cow type, cutting type horses, like we have somewhere we can go with it. Whether it be the cutting, the rein cow horse, the sorting, the roping, you come here and we've got something for you and your horse. Where you might have a horse to sell, we have an avenue for that horse. You're looking to buy, we've got something that'll fit you. So that would be like a long-term goal of mine, is to just have that where we can all kind of work together on that also, where like, we can use the cattle for cutting, we can use them for sorting, we can use them for rein cow horse, where it kind of spreads out the expense a little bit.
Yeah.
Which I think would be fantastic. Another goal I have is I want to be a better dad. I want to be more involved in my kid's life. I want, I've I guess devoted a little time this year to like helping coach wrestling. I'd like to be more involved in some of the activities that they're doing. It's tough with being away so much. Excuse me. It's tough with being away so much. Like last year we spent probably over 120 days away last year. So it's tough to commit to, being a coach or, doing this or doing that. But I think the time that we are here, I'd like to do that more. One that I just thought of is like, I'd like to work towards having the outlook and the personality kind of that Jesse Lennox has. Like, I don't know if you know Jesse Lennox or if anybody listening to this does, but when you meet this guy, you just think he's the happiest guy in the world. Like, I mean, he's just happy-go-lucky. He's, you watch him work, he's talking to his horses and just like so excited about his life and his job and what he gets to do. And I believe that's a choice. I believe that's, something that you're just not born with. That's a choice that you've got to mentally make every day, that I'm going to be excited today. And I would, that's a struggle for me, because there's a lot mentally that goes on behind the scenes that like it really says a lot about his character that he gets up and he does that every day. And then get closer with God. That's something that I've definitely slacked, and I feel like, I need to improve a lot on my life, and that will help in every aspect, but just a little closer relationship there. That I think all those things, you put all those things together, you don't only have a successful business, but you got a successful life.
Yeah.
And I really need to sit down and write those all down and, put that goal sheet up that I can work towards every day.
Yeah. Well, at least now it's recorded, so you can go back and make sure you don't miss anything when you're writing it
check
down.
with me in a year and see how that's working.
Yeah. No, that would be cool to do, honestly. I know just something we talked about a little bit before, too, is sponsoring a buckle that you do for people that haven't got one yet, or youth and stuff.
Yeah, so I think it's 3 or 4 years now. I can't remember exactly, but I've sponsored what we call an achievement buckle, or a never won a buckle award. And it started out as for the youth kids. That I buy one per show for the PCHA, the Pennsylvania Cutting Horse Association. And if you are a youth competitor, you don't have to have the best horse in the class. You don't have to show them the best that day. You just got to show up and give effort, that I might have came in third place, but those other two have already won buckles. I'm going to get a buckle that day. And I've had, a lot of parents and trainers just come up to me and thank me so much that their kid won this buckle, and like they just wear it with pride. They wear it with school. They're showing everybody, and it really sparks an interest in those kids wanting to go and show. Like my kids are kind of getting into this a little bit. When they won it, for the first time this past year, I mean, like it was the coolest thing in the world to them. We've been taking them a little bit to here and there to shows and letting them get in the pen. And it's those little things, like they won cups at a show. My one daughter was first, my other daughter was second. They got a blue cup and a red cup, and like they were just excited to death over this cup, but it was something that they won. And heck, I mean, I know adults that haven't won a buckle yet that they're like, man, I can't wait. I'd like to win that buckle. But those little rewards, just like those little rewards we give those horses, like they mean the world to people. And I'm very grateful that I have the ability to do that, to get those kids involved and to get them excited about this sport.
Yeah. Yeah, when I heard that, I thought it was really cool, and just a way to help grow the sport and understand that drive of, it's cool when you get something out of it, you know what I mean? Like, you love doing it, but when you win something and know you're good, yeah, that's always a plus. But do you want to talk a little more about your kids and stuff and them getting into it and whatnot?
Yeah, so my kids they've always been interested in horses, especially my two older ones, my two girls. It's never been something I've really pushed. I didn't say, hey, get up, you're going riding, or, you guys have to go ride today or whatever. Like now, I'm not going to let them go show if they didn't practice and if they didn't ride. But I've never really pushed them towards it. Honestly, it's going to be cheaper in the long run if they don't do it. But my oldest one's 11, and she's been spending a lot more time with me on the road. She's at the age now where, like, she's very mature, I feel, for an 11-year-old. She went with us to the Summer Spectacular last year. And she was riding my 3-year-old Futurity or horse around. She was helping Becca. Like get the horse ready, wrap the horse's legs, hose the horse. She was out there exercising the horses. Like, she's really taken an interest into it. And Becca's very, very patient and very good with those kids, like just teaching them, the little things on how to take care of these horses. And the last show that my daughter went to, Becca wasn't there. It was me and my assistant Hunter, and it was great. Like, I'd get done showing a horse, my daughter would get on it, she'd go cool it down, she'd take it back to the trailer, she'd unsaddle it, she'd hose it off, she'd help clean stalls. Like, I mean, she's just stepped right in to help out, and she's helped turn back a little bit. It's really cool. It's really cool that I get to work with these kids all the time. In the summertime, they might not be riding, but they're always hanging out down at the arena. I have a bunch of Tonka toys down there, and they might be digging in the dirt or, playing with the dog or whatever. But they annoy the crap out of us trying to get on these horses all the time. Like they really want to do it, and they fight over which horse they get to get. My middle kid, Andy, she is the definition of a horse crazy girl. Like, it doesn't matter if it's negative 10 degrees outside, she wants to be outside and she wants to be on a horse. Like, I just had to tell her this morning, like, no, you're not going outside. The wind is blowing like crazy. It's 20 degrees out. No. Yeah. But like, she is a little tomboy. But she is 100%, like, she'll go down and just clean stalls to, like, they have a horse that they all kind of fight over, Sonny. It's a client of ours, retired horse. He's 22. He's won, I think, maybe 18,000. And they all fight over this horse. But she's like, can I go clean Sonny's stall? Like, yeah, sure, go ahead. So she'll go down and clean the stalls. She'll catch the little pony for her brother. Like, she wants to be a big girl and do everything that, I do or Becca does, the big kid. Like, she just wants to be part of it. Yeah. Now, my boy, he's 4. He's kind of interested. He'll ride the pony around, and the kids all watch Heartland. So, like, that's their favorite show. So they'll take the horses down in the round pen and try to get them to join up like Amy does. And, like, it was comical. We were at the arena the other day, and Hunter was round penning a horse, and Allie, who's 11, and Andy were telling Hunter he was doing it wrong because that's not what Amy does. Like, they were telling him what he needed to be doing with that horse, which is pretty cool, that they're paying attention and they understand what's going on. And Becca's boy, he's interested a little bit some days not. And I think there's a huge difference in personality between the boys and the girls. It's every girl's little dream to have horses and ride and stuff. And the boys are more interested in trucks and, things with motors and doing boy things, guns and shooting Nerf guns at each other and stuff. But that may change. It may not. I don't know. It's just never been anything that I've wanted to push them towards. Yeah. And I think that's kind of paid off, because now they want it. It's like, you tell them, no, you can't do that. They want to do it more or not make them do it. And then they want to do it.
Yeah. No, that's cool. And I always like hearing stories of people that are in this and if their kids are into it too and how they kind of went about it. And
yeah, I mean, I'm very blessed that I get to kind of make my own schedule to a point. Like, I can't, when we have to go to shows and stuff like this, but like I get to take them to school every day, get to pick them up, and I get to spend all summer with them. Yeah. Like, it's not like I have to leave to go to a job all week that, even if I am busy down at the arena, when I come in for lunch, the kids are all there and we eat lunch together and we hang out. It's really cool. And Andy, she cracks me up. We go to the sale barn. She loves going to the sale barn to buy cattle. She knows. I've taught her the difference between the bulls and the steers and the heifers, and she really pays attention to that. And she'll let me know when the auctioneer's wrong. He might call them steers and they're not, or vice versa. But she has her own paper and pen, and she marks them off as they come in. And she's really interested in how I buy them, because we've all been to auctions and sometimes you can't tell who's bidding or what. And I'm like, hey, we just bought those cows. And she's like, no, we didn't. I'm like, yeah. Well, how'd you do that? Yeah. And then I let her bid on some, and then she learned that she could just hold her hand in the air. And so the auctioneer luckily checks in with me and says, are we allowed to? I'm like, yeah, it's all right. But man, it's just, I'm really blessed that I get to spend this time with them. And, yeah, I'm gone a lot. And it sucks sometimes that, I miss out on some things. But the time that I do have there, we just get to do some cool things. Yeah. And I really, really enjoy that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there anything else you wanted to make sure we touch on or talk about? Or
I can't think of off the top of my head. I feel like we've covered a lot. Like I could ramble on about stuff all the time. Especially, if you start asking questions about this or that, or why we do this or why we do that. But off the top of my head, I can't think of anything.
Yeah. Well, if you want to wrap up by sharing any sponsors, plugging yourself, if someone's got a prospect or a horse they want to see if it'll cut, send to you or...
Absolutely. I mean, if you have any questions about this sport, about this industry, if it's something you think you want to get started in, like, please reach out to us. We'll do our best to get you set on the right path, even if it's not with us. We've had multiple people come up to us at shows and be like, hey, man, we want to get into this, and they're like, oh, wow, you're far away, and it all depends on what we want. Like, we have clients in Alabama. Most of our clients are over 4 or 5 hours away. But, if it's something that you want to work with a trainer that's close to you, like, we can make recommendations, whatever you want to do, please don't feel like you can't reach out and talk to us. If you're looking to get a horse started or you're looking to buy a horse and get into this, whatever it is, we can set you on the right path or get you set up, whether we can help you or we can find somebody that can. You can find us on Facebook at Nave Cowhorses. I think we have an Instagram also. So send us a message. Our phone number's on there. Give us a call. Let us get you set up and get you going. And our sponsors, man, we've got a new sponsor this year that I'm looking forward to working with. It's Katie West She's an equine insurance professional LLC agent. She covers everything from residential homes, barns, arenas, tack, hay, equipment. She does equine, actually, like insurance, like mortality insurance and theft, surgical, like, you have a horse colic. Like, she'll get you set up to wherever you need with your equine, either business or horses or even property. Our next sponsor I'd like to talk about would be Tommel. It's That Others May Live. It's a great company that's doing great things with veterans. It's actually a CBD product. They have several different products, and we use every one of them. The first product I'd like to talk about is the tincture that you put in a horse's mouth, or even I take it myself sometimes. I like to think of it as like the Alpha Brain supplement that you'll hear Joe Rogan talk about, that like it just kind of gives a calm and clarity. It's an alternative to drugs or sedation. I feel that we have a little 4-year-old right now that it's just she's kind of anxious, and she's kind of like a hard charger. Like everywhere she goes, like she's just in a hurry. We give her this supplement before we work her, before we show her, and it just kind of lets her focus and lets her kind of relax a little bit, but doesn't take away that spark. The other product that we use in conjunction with that would be like their flakes. Kind of does the same thing. Just really works on the mental clarity and focus of that horse. Helps with a bunch of other things also, but that's why we use it. They have a pellet product that just helps with overall health of that horse. It really, works with joints and muscle recovery, just helping that horse feel its best. And then with that, they have a salve that you put on like different pressure points and nerve endings, that if a horse is sore here or sore there, there's different places that you can place this, and it's not where you think, like it might be behind an ear or up underneath a shoulder to hit something somewhere else. But Scott has been so great about teaching us, and he's been a wealth of information and knowledge that, like, if I'm having a problem, I give Scott a call, say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. What do you got? Or how should I use this, or how should I use that? And, he's like, hey, give it this, or give it a little more of this, or back that down, just kind of do different things so that we get that horse performing at its top level. And, I mean, it's been great people to work with. I really like his product, and that's huge that we have a product we can stand behind. Our next sponsor is Leaders Farm Equipment. They're a local business. They sell farm equipment, and they sell implements. They sell cattle feeders and stuff to do with cattle, new and used. They also service equipment. They keep us up and running. Like our tractor went down this year. They come pick it up. They get it working, bring it back. Our drag went down. They have it currently. That keeps us informed. Prices are really good. Service department's great. He zips around. They sell all over the world. They buy all over the world. He's just him and his wife are doing great things in the community also. Like, they really give back, and to be able to team up with a company like that, I really enjoy. Somebody who's not just out there for the business, but to make the surrounding area a better place. And then our last sponsor is Dublin Gap Ranch. They're about an hour and 15 minutes away from us, and they have a beautiful facility. Their main focus is Arabian horses, and then they have some ranch horses also. We've trained some horses for them, some Arabians and some ranch horses, but mainly we use their facility. We hold clinics there. We hold lesson days there. Every time I'm there, these people go above and beyond to make sure I have everything I need. They get us cattle. They have a flag, great footing. They have a bunkhouse that we stay in. It's just top of the line, great bathrooms, a kitchen, and like observation deck of this place it's unbelievable. I can't say enough about how well these people are to work with and work for. And they hold rodaires, they've held sortings, they're planning on holding some cuttings. Every time I'm there, they just make me feel like I'm almost a king, like whatever I need. And they do that for everybody. You can call them up and rent their arena, or if you want to hold a show or a clinic or whatever. We did an open house there where it was free to the public, that people just came and learned about what they do. They learned about what we do. We worked, 10, 15 horses that day. They're really big, and even though they have Arabians, they're very big on promoting the Western lifestyle, and they just love what we do. They have working dogs they work their cattle with, and just great people, great facility, top of the line. With that being said, we are very open to having new sponsors, so if you think we have a product or a business that you would like us to promote, give us a call. We can talk about things, we can work it out, see if it's a good fit for us and our goals align. It's, like I said before, we all kind of got to work together and help everyone succeed.
Yeah. Well, with that, I want to thank you again for being patient with me and my podcast equipment. And
well, I hope it doesn't sound too jumbled. I couldn't remember what we talked about the first and the second.
Yeah. But yeah, I really appreciate it, and you let me work the flag on one. It's the first time I ever got to do that. So
yeah, tell me a little bit about that. What did you think when you worked that horse on the flag?
Oh, it was so cool. Not gonna lie, there was a big part of me that was hoping that I'd get the opportunity to at least get on one or do whatever, and it was so cool. Haven't felt that kind of feeling before, when that horse just kind of locks onto it and you can put your hand down and basically just stay with them as they do what they're trained to do. But yeah, it was super cool, and very thankful that you let me do that. So
yeah, not a problem. And that's a big part of our business, and something I feel we need to do a lot more of is you don't know what it feels like until you actually do it. And you got to work the flag, and it's just intensify that even more when you're on a live cow. But just the intensity in these horses, how committed they are to their job and how intense they are. And you don't do a whole lot. There's things that you can do to make it better. But when that horse starts buckling and shaking, just waiting for that cow to make that move, there's nothing like it. And I had a guy call me while we were down in Florida. He's a military guy who was in the Special Forces, and his buddies are in Texas, and they called him and said, "Hey man, we found it." And I was like, "What do you mean you found it?" He said, "We found something that makes us feel like we're, back in that high speed environment."
Yeah.
And he said, "It's something that we search for, when you're in that line of work." And that maybe this is why I picked this up after being in, the schools and being in the military and stuff, that, you're kind of chasing that next adrenaline rush. And he's like, "This is it. This is me." So he's really excited to come down and start doing it. He's never done it. He's never even rode a horse. But when his buddies called and said, "Hey, you need to try this. This is the next best thing to, going on a mission or whatever." There's really no way to explain it until you get on one and you feel what that's like.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. But again, just thank you very much. And maybe we can sit down and do one in the future sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep.